There he is. Yeah, he's on. Okay, there's a bell. It's time to start. All right, welcome. This is on. It's loud. Yeah. Okay. It's time to begin. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming tonight to the joint committee meeting for Community Board 2 of the Parks and Waterfront and the Landmarks Committees. The topic, we have one topic today, and that is presentation by hello. Yeah. Is this one better? Welcome to the joint committee meeting, Parks and Waterfront and the Landmarks Committee meeting. My name is Rich Cacapolo. I am the what's our title? Chair of the Parks and Waterfront Committee. And Chenault is on there. He is the chair of the Landmarks Committee, and I'll introduce him in a second. We're here with one topic this evening. The topic is a presentation by and discussion with the Parks Department concerning the Tony Dapolito Rec Center at 1 Clarkson Street. And we will introduce the Manhattan Borough Commissioner, Tricia Shimamura. Maybe you can just raise your hand, just say hi, and then we'll do it. And she's got her team here, and they have a presentation. That's really going to be the focus of the meeting. But before we get into that presentation, I wanted to just allow the committee board members to just introduce themselves. So let me start at the end there.
Frederica Siegel, Parks.
Ben Listman, Parks.
Eddie Siegel, Parks.
Susanna Aaron, vice chair of Parks.
Valerie De La Rosa, committee member of Landmarks and first vice chair for the board.
Okay, I'm Brian Pape. I'm on the Landmarks Committee.
We have other here tonight. Let me start by introducing our Susan. So say hi.
Speaking, I'm chair of board.
Right. And who else around? Anybody else who's
Yeah, me.
folks?
Under Parks.
Right. Shirley's on. And as I said, Chenault is on. Let me introduce Mark to those who don't know Mark. He runs the community board as our district manager, and he does all the setup for the meeting tonight. And so thank you, Mark.
I have before, which is that the power will go off in this room at about 8:15. Nothing to worry about. It happens every time. And there's a wonderful custodian who turns it back on. But don't think that the apocalypse has come.
And so we are going to, as I said, just focus on a presentation by the Parks Committee, and they brought some people to do that. And then we are going to have questions and comments. We'll start with elected officials, and then we'll move to the committee members, and then any other members of the board, and then we'll open it up to the members of the public. We will pass around a sheet if you want to speak, but I'd suggest maybe you can sign up, but if the presentation covers what you want to say, you don't have to, you can comment at that point. Yeah, we'll see how many people sign up. So let me just do a brief introduction. This, just to set context for those of you who haven't come to every meeting, and we've been discussing this for a dozen years, so I would understand. We started talking about Dapolito, at least in my time, with discussions around the Hudson Square rezoning. That was back in 2012. Our committee and this community board have repeatedly requested and advocated for a modern recreation center with full-sized, up-to-code gymnasium, pool, exercise space, community rooms. Initially, we asked for, I think, 50,000 square feet, which we also thought could offer space for programming, including after-school programs, arts programs, childcare facilities, senior programs. I remember talking about senior lunch programs, as well as classes, evening programs. It's a meeting space that was used by Greenwich Village Little League, by the community board for many years. And I know that I found in the notes, and Frederica found in the notes, at least 8 times that our committee has discussed this, passing resolution after resolution, requesting action, each time with increasing urgency, especially since the Tony Dapolito Recreation Center and outdoor pool were closed to the public. And recognizing that a resolution to this crisis was nowhere in sight, our community needs were only growing. Our community board two took what I thought was a bold action in July of last year, passing a resolution urging that the proposed housing development at 388 Hudson include a New York City Parks Recreation Center that would span at least 3 floors at the base of the building's footprint. And the city agreed to put that into the RFP. But we didn't give up on the Tony Dapolito Rec Center and not just the outdoor pool. And so that's then I think in September, Landmarks passed a resolution asking for more input into the status of the building and asked that it be not be knocked down, not be demolished, right? So on Friday, there was a tour given to elected officials by the Parks Department and the city representatives, and there a lot of pictures are taken. You'll see those in a presentation today. I hope everyone can listen to the experts who have come this evening, and I hope that they can and that you can that the presentation will convey what's there, and that the presenters will convey what's there, because it's I am not an expert, but when you walk around, you get a sense that the building is not in it's in a very dangerous state, maybe not dangerous, but a very difficult to salvage state. And I ask, is it worth salvaging? And we'll talk about that. So let me turn it over, Trish, if you don't mind, to you, and you can run this section as you please. And then we'll save the questions till the end.
Oh, I'll stand up in front, but I'll try to stand on the side because I don't want to upstage everybody. Hi, everybody. I'm Tricia Shimamura, and I'm your still relatively new Manhattan Borough Commissioner. I started less than a year ago with the, oh, sorry. So sorry. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. I'm Tricia Shimamura. I'm your still relatively new Borough Commissioner. That's all I really said, from the Parks Department. In July, you saw me on Zoom, and I'm really happy to see you all in person here as we come back. Before I say more, I'm just gonna, you probably could have guessed this, but I am not one of those experts either, talking about engineering and structural integrity and all of those other pieces. But the good news is that we did bring some of those tonight to walk through a little more of what's going on at Tony Dapp. But some of you may know me because I worked with a lot of you previously in the borough president's office. I was working with Mark Levine as his director of community affairs. Before that, I was serving on my own community board for about 10 years, chairing the Parks Committee in the borough of Manhattan. So I want to first and foremost just say thank you to everybody who came out here tonight. I know it's cold. I know it's exhausting to come out here. I know everybody has really busy lives. I want to thank the joint committees for doing the work. I know it's a lot, and I know that you have a lot of things going on. So I really appreciate the continued focus on Tony Dapolito and on, frankly, the entire state of parks in CB2. It's an important issue. This is an area that has a lot of families, a lot of people who use our park spaces, who use our recreational spaces, who used to use the outdoor pool over here. And we really know how important it is to maintain these spaces and to keep them up. And so I just really want to appreciate your time and thank you for being out here. I'm going to just set the stage a minute, and then I'm going to introduce somebody from City Hall who also is here tonight. So, oh, you're throwing my flow. Oh, sorry, Chanel.
Chanel, would you like to say something?
Yes, sorry. There are just a couple of things. First of all, we're regarding, from the Landmarks point of view, this as being a continuation of the September forum that was on the same subject, and the Parks Department report was not ready at that time, and they asked to come after the first of the year, and this is after the first of the year. I'll say the rest after it's finished. Thank you.
Great. So perfect. So, oh man, I forgot where I was, but something about Okay, introducing people. That's right. Okay, so let me just give you a little bit of background and just you already heard that me say that I'm not the expert, but I'm really grateful for the parks team who's here tonight to talk a little bit more with their background in all the things that you need to be an expert in terms of engineering and analysis to talk about this. But I want to set your expectations from the very beginning. In July, I told you that we didn't have all the answers, and I'm going to just remind you that we still don't have all the answers.
Trisha, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but your back is to the camera, and I'm getting a lot of comments online. So, and no one else seems to be pointing it out. So I want to be mindful of the hundreds of people online. I mean, you guys can see it on there. I can't. I'm just telling. It just needs to. It's. Hopefully it'll zoom in. It looks like it's better. Yeah. It's okay. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Third time. Okay. You got who I am. You got my background. You got my thank you for being here. You got me saying that I'm not the experts. We're on to the part where I tell you that we still don't have all the answers to everything. So I want to manage your own expectations here. We said that we were going to come back when when we were doing some analysis, a further analysis on this building. We're going to come back and show you and tell you what that analysis was talking about, what the additional information we have. That does not mean that we have all the answers to everything. But I hope that you can see that by us coming back here, when there is no land use action before the board, when we said that we were going to come back, that the Parks Department is following through on its promise to come back before you, that there's a genuine desire to work with the community to talk about this building in real time, where we stand, and to really talk about where we are. So I'm going to recommit again. This is not something where you have to try very hard to get in touch with us. We're here. Parks Department is here. Susan has both of my cell phone numbers. There are a lot of ways that you can get in touch with us. This is not a time where we're going to drop information on you and walk away and you're never going to hear from us again. We're continuing to be here because we know how important this area is. We know how important it is to you. It's important to me. It's important to the Parks Department. And so we're going to continue to follow through and continue to talk to you about where we stand with this building. So just want to manage your expectations there. And then before I pass it over to other speakers who are more informed than I am, I want to just say that give you a little bit of background of where we are and how we got here. So last July, we came back here to give you a little bit of a status update on where Tony Dapolito was, as well as talk about 388 Hudson, which, as Rich had said, this community board has passed a number. I was going to say 4, but you said 8. A number of resolutions talking about the need for additional recreational spaces, especially incorporated into that project. Very exciting that that's moving forward. Can't wait to talk to you about what that's going to look like. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be my first time to go through it myself. But we had said at that time that the Department of Design and Construction was going to be doing some additional analysis on the building to look at those structural issues that we were really concerned about when starting to do some work. And so we were waiting for that report to come back. So the report has come back. We're really going to talk about that piece now. And there was a commitment on behalf of Parks to really come back to this community. But acknowledge the next committee all works and have a meeting in the fall and wanting to talk about this building and the contributions it makes historic certain recognize. And he asked us to come, and at that didn't have that report done yet. So I appreciate that we called him and talked to him on the phone, and we had said we will come back and here. Again, this is not I can very conversation by the end of but I really say we're meeting and with you.
Have you lost sound, Shirley?
Yeah, I have as well to note. I think it's because they lost their connection.
We still have the picture in the room.
Yeah, I think it's an audio problem. We still have them. We still see them.
She's also on mute.
Oh,
That camera is muted, by the way.
Are you able to hear us? Raise a hand. No one can hear what's going on in the room?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? I
Now,
Zoom.
now we
Oh,
can hear
yes,
you.
we can hear.
I
No.
hear you, yes.
Zoom cannot hear us.
Shirley, can you see me and hear me?
Now I can.
No, not. Mark,
Okay.
I don't think they're hearing. Okay, Mark is working on this. And you will get a little prize for your patience. I can't tell you what it is. It'll be good.
You should all apply to your community board during this time. Portal's open. Yeah.
I just sent a stern message that it can't continue. We have something like 140
Zoom.
people on.
Can you mute them? Lord knows what. They can hear?
Guys,
Chanel,
we
are you
can
able
hear
to
you
hear us?
now. We can hear you, Susanna.
Okay, good.
Hi,
Great,
can you hear?
thank you.
And
Can you
muted,
please
yes.
Thank you. Please all mute yourselves now. And I'm glad that we resolved that. Thank you.
No more words from me. Here's our Zach Campbell from City Hall.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Excellent. Thank you so much. And Tricia, thank you very much. Apologies. I can't keep as much information in my brain all at once as she can. I've got a couple of notes. My name's Zach Campbell. I'm a senior policy advisor for the Deputy Mayor of Operations, Mira Joshi. Even closer to the mouth. There we go. We're happy to be back here tonight talking about Tony Dapolito Rec Center as promised with you. And I'm going to be really brief in my opening remarks so that we can get to the experts who can give the real update that Tricia talked about. First, I want to thank all of the city teams who have worked on this project. It's not just Parks, who has done a lot of hard and thoughtful work on this rec center, but also the Department of Design and Construction, Housing Preservation and Development, and City Planning, who have all been working hand in hand on how we can deliver the best projects for New Yorkers, not just the rec center itself, but also in the thoughts on 388 Hudson. This is a case of very integrated and thoughtful interagency work, so thank you all. Second, thank you to the elected officials, the community board, and quite frankly, all of you community members who are here tonight and have come to meetings previously, as we've discussed, and given vital feedback, which has been helpful in our thought and understanding of what to do. This facility is a beloved community institution. We all know that on so many levels. And actually, quite frankly, I was talking with one of my colleagues earlier today who played rec league basketball, junior basketball at Tony Dapolito 25 years ago. We hear you, and we hope that our presentation tonight provides more details on the state of the existing facility and that further outlines the careful analysis that the agencies have done on the state of the building. And third, and probably most importantly, and I may be giving away the punchline of the rest of the presentation, but I want to confirm that Tony Dapolito and J.J. Walker Park as a whole will remain for public park use. When Parks presented to CB2 on Tony Dapp last summer, evaluation of the building, as we noted, was still ongoing, and the team was encouraged to think broadly and creatively about how to address the challenges of the building, including the possibility of a potential housing option, which is a priority for this administration. However, after thorough evaluation of the recent analysis of the facility and careful consideration of the feedback that we've heard from your board, from the elected officials, and beyond, we believe that maintaining the site for park use is the right way forward. There's a lot more to come. We believe we can bring the most amount of resources online for the community through a combination of the 388 Hudson new mixed-use affordable housing development that will be co-located with an indoor rec center and indoor pool, and by reconstructing the Tony Dapolito facility on eastern side of J.J. Walker Park in a way that brings back and potentially expands upon outdoor aquatics that this community wants so badly. So without further ado, that's enough for my comments. I'm going to turn it over to the Parks team.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out where to stand. Is the presentation up?
Hi, I'm Chris Dignus. I'm on the board. Oh, I'm on Parks. There you go.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to try to stand here so I don't have my back to anyone and I can also see the screen. Is it possible to, unless you need the windows up, to minimize that so we can see the full screen, or perhaps go to full screen? But good evening, everyone. My name is Jesslyn Moser. I'm a planning project administrator at New York City Parks, and we're looking forward to giving you this update on Tony Dapolito tonight as a follow-up to our previous information update over the summer. As far as the agenda, so I'll just walk us through these first few slides before passing it over to our architecture and engineering experts, but we'll do a quick overview of Tony Dapolito. We'll talk about the community feedback we've heard and reflect back what we have heard. And of course, tonight is about hearing some more from you, so there will be ample time for questions later. We'll discuss how some of this feedback has helped to inform overarching goals and thinking about an approach for this site. And then we'll delve really into the meat of the presentation, which will be about the building condition and engineering analysis, discussing the structure, the functionality of the building, and also how the building's historic construction relates to certain elements and conditions that we see today. And then we'll have next steps, discussions, and questions. So on the next slide, we have a map. This is your neighborhood. So, but just to visually orient everyone for the sake of the presentation, an aerial overview. So we have Tony Dapolito Rec Center on the corner of 7th Avenue South and Clarkson Street. As you know, the outdoor pool is directly adjacent. It's quite close and abuts the recreation center. You actually have to walk through the recreation center to access the outdoor pool. So while these are two separate facilities, they are very integrally linked, which we'll talk about shortly. We've also noted the Keith Haring mural, which forms essentially the perimeter to the outdoor pool. And that boundary there. There are, of course, other elements in the park: playground, spray shower, handball courts, currently used as pickleball courts, bocce, the field, but notably across the street, since it's related, the 388 Hudson mixed-use development that HPD has planned and which CB2 has advocated for, and we've heard you on that, having a New York City Parks Recreation Center in that facility. We've also noted Hudson Houston Plaza, which will be a new plaza. This is DEP property that will be coming online with new public access, so that's very exciting. And we've noted a couple civic institutions, library, and schools. So just a recap of when we last presented to you in July. On the next slide. At the time, there were lots of questions. We all see the scaffolding around the building and the signs the building is closed. There were lots of questions from the community about the state of the building, what's going on inside, what's the condition, what action is being taken, and is it opening soon? And so we came to provide an update, and we definitely heard you that this is a very well-used and loved amenity, not only for this community, but for other visitors from other parts of the city. And there's a lot of pride in that. We shared at the time that the facility was structurally compromised and would not be opening at that time. We also shared and explained how the outdoor pool is linked with that building. And so that would not be opening at the time. And we did mention that we were evaluating several scenarios for the future of the site to make the best investment for the neighborhood, looking at how to maximize recreation space in a cost-effective manner. And we did relay that we were exploring demolition of the building and future uses of the site. At the time, we definitely were interested in doing some more technical analysis. We also heard from you for a request for more information on the technical engineering pieces about the condition of the building. And so we did commit to coming back to the community to discuss that. And we've had some time to do that. And so that's where we are today. Next slide. Sure. Yeah. Okay. So We are here to hear from you. We have also been hearing from you. And so just want to take a moment to reflect that we've heard your community feedback. And some of what we heard largely falls into these three larger themes. The first is that the rec center, the pool, the park, those associated recreational facilities are beloved amenities, and that there's a really strong desire for the site to remain as public park use. We have heard you on that. Related, so we heard it's very popular and very well used. At the same time, there was recognition that the site has its constraints, given its historic construction, given how the building was cobbled together over time. The spaces that we were left with and inherited was never built in one piece, envisioned as a modern recreation center. And so we have made the best of what we have as a recreation center. But there definitely are constraints on programming. We have heard a lot of interest in honoring the building's history. We understand that the building is in a contributing building to a historic district, and that the community is interested in seeking preservation opportunities. And we have heard pride in the Keith Haring mural, of course, next to the pool. And of course, the importance of public safety. So while the building is being supported, just continuing to maintain that, maintaining the exterior of the building, given that it's right, on a corner lot. We've heard you that indoor recreation is critical, and that there's a very strong desire for a recreation center at 388 Hudson Street. And CB2 passed multiple, I believe it's 6, but perhaps it's more, resolutions for this facility to be incorporated into an RFP. This is an HPD plan development with an HPD RFP. And so we have heard you on that. And we generally heard just really interested in the importance of having a year-round indoor space that's accessible, affordable to all in a gym where there may be private gyms, but that Tony Dapolito really, as a rec center, provided that access. And then we also heard just the importance of outdoor recreation, interest in swimming, sports, leisure, and culture destination, also related to how the site just overall celebrates swimming and kind of has that theme also with the Keith Haring mural. So next slide. Okay. And so all of that's to say that we have gathered and are continuing to gather feedback that helps us to inform some overarching goals. New York City Parks is steward of this site, and so we are seeking to be responsible and restore indoor recreation facilities as efficiently and quickly as possible, restore outdoor swimming access, honor history, and preserve historic elements where feasible, and prudently manage city costs alongside benefits. So these are all some guiding principles as we think about the future of the site. Next slide. And I will just take a minute. So today's update essentially is about the building, the condition, and the engineering analysis that we've been working on past few months. Essentially, the latest analysis continues to affirm that there are serious structural conditions with the building, and that the building has very limited reconstruction potential. And we will discuss all this in detail, show photos, explain in a more technical sense. So after that, we'll have discussion of next steps. We'd like to discuss an opportunity to really lean into the outdoor pool access and that as a priority for the community, and discuss potential improvements to adjacent open space and how we can work with the community on that. But really the meat of the presentation tonight is to hear from our technical experts on the condition of the building, so you can ask any questions. We've attempted to put photos in the presentation so you could get a sense of, since it is closed, what is going on inside and what the kind of structures are, the measures needed to keep the building shored up and safe. And so with that, I am going to pass it to Rebecca Burns, who's our Chief of Architecture at New York City Parks. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. As Jocelyn said, my name is Rebecca Burns. I am the Chief of Architecture and Engineering for Capital Projects. I'm also joined with Ben Conable, our Deputy Director of Structural Engineering, so he will be able to answer some of the most important questions. We can go to the next slide. Sorry.
Sorry, just to interrupt, we can't see the slide presentation on screen right now.
Rita, we're working on that. Folks on Zoom, we're working on that.
Thank you.
Let me know when you see it, if you see it. Were you seeing it before?
Yes,
You were seeing it before?
yes.
Well, there will be something to look at. Actually, the presentation continues. Online, are you guys seeing this green slide that says in historical structure impacts? Are you seeing that?
No,
Yes, no, you can't see that online.
no.
Uh,
too. I can see it.
Yeah,
um,
some can and some
okay,
can't.
it seems like Ritu, maybe it's only you. Is anybody
Okay.
else experiencing that? Okay, Ritu, check your link and
I
maybe.
can see it also.
Okay, so everyone can see it, but
All
Ritu,
right,
so the
so
problem is not
apologies, guys.
from here, not at all. Thank you. Mute yourselves and maybe loop back in. Okay, we'll move on.
Okay. So let me at any time know to put the mic back up if you can't hear me. But in order to understand the conditions of Tony D'Appolito right now, we had to step back and think about, see how it is historically built. The building was actually not built as one continuous building as you see it now. It was the original portion of the building, the 1908 bathhouse is what you see in the yellow. And there's, I don't know if you can see it, but it's basically the centerpiece that's outlined in red. When the 7th Avenue realignment happened, they had to take off a piece of one of the corners of that building, and they added the 1922 addition that you see in the lower corner that is triangle shaped. And then in 1929, they added the west addition, which houses the indoor pool and one of the gyms. The original building was not designed in any way for our the way we use the modern recreation center. So the public programs has been using this center and trying to use it to the best of their ability, but it doesn't have as much programming as we usually have or would like to offer. And unfortunately, because of how this building was built in separate parts, and when we get into it, some of the structural systems, it really presents a really tight grid that we cannot modify. So I'll go to the next slide. The original 1908 public bathhouse was built with a Guastavino tile vaulting system, which is a very beautiful system, but a system that is not really not used anymore. And when it is stable in it and very strong when it's left alone, trying to manipulate the system or modify it like we might modify a more modern system makes it very fragile. So that's one of the challenges. And then the other two additions, the two 1920s additions were actually more modern structure of steel encased by concrete. All of these systems are showing some deterioration and failures on the from water infiltration on the structural steel beams. So the next slide. So over time, Parks has actually tried to really start and really invest in this building. We had a capital project that was basically really trying to address some of the more urgent needs of the building with a plan to do further projects in the future. In that project, we put in some study on the existing conditions. And unfortunately, as we started to unravel some of the conditions, we found them to be in a much more deteriorated state than we originally thought. This prompted that we needed to shore up portions of the building. Right now you can see the outside scaffolding that basically, I'm sure you've all seen, basically wraps the 1929 addition on the west side that faces the pool. That's shoring up that and protecting everyone from the facade conditions there. Next slide, sorry. We also had to do some interior shoring on the inside of the 1908 building. This is the gym, one of the gyms, the smaller of the two gyms that is in that 1908 building and under the Guastavino structural system. That Guastavino dome is load bearing, and so we actually found a crack in there while we were working on our capital project, which made us have to pause and do some temporary shoring here. We added temporary shoring, which is the scaffolding that you see. There's also shoring underneath the track because that's hung from the ceiling. And then there is also additional crack monitoring in place so that we understand that that shoring is keeping the building stable. And we're alerted at any time that there's any sort of changes to that. With all that said, the building is safe in the sense that we have this temporary condition that's shoring up the building. So it is safe for us to walk in if needed but not for the public. Sorry, yeah, next slide, sorry. These slides just show some of the challenges with the Guastavino domes, and you can see on the left side is the crack in that dome, and that actually shows where the crack monitor is. This is some of the steel that was uncovered that is deteriorated in that gym area. Next. Additionally, there were many studies done. We employed outside consultants to look at this, and we actually also worked with one of our sister agencies, DDC. And this slide is just showing some of the additional structural and or deficiencies in the building. There's some cracking in the pool, both on the interior pool and on the exterior pool in the center. Some of the cracks that are there's some spalling on and movement on the lintels, and then you can see some of the deteriorated concrete that's showing the rusted rebar. Next. Sorry about the pause. So that was basically looking at many of the challenges of the actual physical building on the inside and the outside. This slide, what is starting to talk about is actually the challenges around the building. So we have a few challenges to this building. We are abutted up next to the New York Public Library building. So anything we do, we have to do in coordination with the library, and we have to protect that building as well if we do any sort of construction there. Additionally, the way this building was built, it was built with sidewalk vaults, which you can see in the red. Those are those vaults that go actually under the sidewalk and are currently showing signs of deterioration. And then one of the larger challenges also is there's only about a 5-foot distance between those sidewalk vaults and the actual MTA tunnel that has the subway underneath. Next. Okay, the next slide. So that these images just show where that red sidewalk, that image in the last image where that red color was, these are the sidewalk vaults underneath the sidewalk. This is how we used to build buildings, and now there are issues with some of the structural steel here. You can see on the left is the shoring that's holding that up to make it unsafe. But it's definitely would need to be reconstructed. Next. So this is a section of the building, just to start to talk about the limited recreational functionality of the building. And we'll start to go through some of the more specific programs that we had that are much smaller than what we would like to offer. And so you can see that in this section, because of the multiple buildings being built over time, there's little flexibility to moving that or moving any of the program around or enlarging without really impacting the building. And so this building has this really tight, inflexible grid. And we'll start to go through some of the programming on the next slide that shows some of the programming that we have now, and you probably all are familiar with it, but this is the larger of the two gyms. This is the one that is in the 1929 building. And I don't know if you can see it, but the green columns there that are highlighted in green are actually the exterior structure of that 1929 building. So we cannot enlarge it in width. Currently, it's about less than half the size of a high school regulation court, and it has no circulation around it and no room for spectators. So you can see in this picture the difference between the two gyms. That was the gym 1 that we were seeing, and the smaller gym that has the shoring in it compared to a high school standard size basketball gym. Sorry, I can't. Oh, sorry. Okay. One of the other challenges is at our indoor pool. And this indoor pool is also constrained by the 1929 structure of that old building where you only have a certain width and you can't really modify beyond that. And right now our pool is not ADA accessible. And it also acts as a pathway for the outdoor pool. So when the outdoor pool, which probably many of you know, is open, you actually have to circulate through the indoor pool to the outdoor pool, which is very challenging to have people coming, only in a very small width to go to the outside. Additionally, there's leaving the pool as is not an option. It is currently leaking and it is cracked. Over time, we have to refill this pool and the outdoor pool, and it becomes a very challenge for operationally. You can and sort of a drain on public resources as well, because we have to refill it, rechlorinate it, retest it, and make sure it's up and meets all the DOH codes. But additionally, we would have to bring it up, if we touch that pool, we would have to bring it up to modern standards and have the proper clearance around the deck. And which would mean we would probably have to lose at least one lane, which would only leave you with, at best, a 2-lane pool. The next slide. And this is just showing the indoor track. Currently, what we're aiming for indoor tracks is a 1/4 mile track. This track is only 0.03 of a mile. Additionally, it's a very challenging to get there. It's not accessible. It's narrow. It only allows for a few people on it at a time. You can see, I don't know if you can see the picture of the staircase on the left. It's only 2 feet wide, and it's just not up to today's current standards or codes. Additionally, you can see the difference between our current offering on weight rooms and what is at Tony D'Appolito. Next. So that was all the interior sort of programming and some of the major challenges there's there in that. We're just going to step outside and look at the outdoor pool. I know this is a wonderful amenity for the community, and but what we're just showing here is you can see the proximity of the outdoor pool to the building, but also they rely on each other. They're integral to each other. As it was saying before, the locker rooms and the restrooms, to meet DOH code and to allow that pool to open, is used in the building. So people have to come through the building, go out to the outdoor pool. Additionally, the filter plant that in the mechanical systems, the guts of the pool that allows it to be properly chlorinated is in that old Tony D'Appolito building. And we can go to the next slide. Additionally, what's challenging is, we'll look at it, but is that the scaffolding for that west wall, here we go, is sitting on that pool deck. So right now we need to address that facade. The pool basin is really past its useful life. It's currently also leaking and has the same sort of challenges of that, having to refill it every day and rechlorinate it. And there is the foundation of the pool is also showing some deterioration. But we do recognize that what an important part of the community this outdoor swimming is. So any sort of study in the future for a future project would be including a study of bringing back aquatics. I guess the next slide. So out on that outdoor pool is the beautiful Keith Haring mural. It was originally, I don't really probably don't have to go through all the facts, but was done by Keith Haring in 1987. New York Parks regularly inspects this wall, and we work with the Haring Foundation on keeping those inspections up and keeping the wall in the proper restored condition. And then through this partnership, the wall has actually been restored 4 times. The next slide. And the top one is him painting it. So in terms of the actual wall that is holding that mural is painted on, it is structurally stable, but it is not up to modern standards for reinforcing. And it does need some additional attention if we were ever to, once we would restore the mural again. And just an example of what the process is for restoring one of these beautiful murals. This is an example of Crackus Whack uptown. Basically, the entire wall gets stripped down and it's completely repainted. So the walls are not the original paint from, when Keith Haring put it on the wall. Next slide. So just back to, this building is built in 3 parts. It looks like one continuous facade, but understanding that when you're looking at this facade from the 7th Avenue and Clarkson sides, you're actually looking at 3 different pieces. There's been the structural deficiencies over time, which is why we have added the netting on that one facade, and then on the other facades, the structural scaffolding. We understand that the historical elements of this facade and any sort of project we would look at in the future would be studying sort of the keeping or preserving any portions of these historical elements that we could, understanding that some of them are already deteriorated or need to be restored by them, go through some restorative practices on their own by themselves. Next. And just to summarize, so we went through some of the challenges we're having on the building, right? So we have the building being built in three parts. That's one of the main core challenges of this building. Additionally, we've found many engineering structural deficiencies. We've done that not just through Parks, but with our consultants and with DDC. The structural elements supporting the building are structurally compromised, and that's why we have all this additional shoring. And to provide a universally accessible modern rec center in this building would be extremely challenging and extremely inefficient. And we don't even think we could get all the programming in there or enlarging some of the undersized programming that's there. And that's it. I'm going to go give it back to Jesselyn. and she's going to talk about next steps.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Okay, so I'll say next slide a couple seconds in advance. So we hope that since the building was closed, we hope that shares more information about the condition of the building, what's inside, the physical challenges with, and how the building is structurally compromised. Just for a second to bring us back to the overarching goals. So in light of what we have heard about the building condition, again, we're looking to restore indoor recreation, bring it back in a way that's better than ever before, restore outdoor swimming access, look at how we can honor history and preserve elements where feasible, and then prudently manage city costs and benefits. So on the next slide, I'm going to also go back to the original, some of the community feedback we've heard and how we're looking to address these pieces. The first being the community desire for a site to remain community park use. And we want to be very clear, and we are confirming for you tonight that this site will remain for public park use. It's continuing as a park. Any future improvement, and that's something that we'd like to discuss with you, would be as parks and open space recreational services. Any future project will seek to honor history, incorporate restoration of the Keith Haring mural, and study the feasibility of restoring any historic elements, particularly along the exterior facing 7th Avenue and Clarkson Street specifically. As far as indoor recreation, Parks has been working collaboratively with HPD on incorporating a New York City Parks Rec Center into that. And so that is moving along, and if you can go back for a second, and we hope to see the release of that RFP shortly. It'll be public. It'll have all the information in there about what HPD is looking for the building and what we're looking for a rec center. If you don't mind going back for a second. Oh, okay. Thank you. And I do just want to note that as part of that RFP process, the community, once a developer is designated, and we can come back to when we have these opportunities, but the community will have a chance to provide input on recreation center programming at that new site at 388 Hudson. So there will be more public touch points about that. And as far as outdoor recreation, we hear you on the outdoor pool and the importance of swimming, water access. It all gets very hot in the summer. We know we like places to cool down. And so we're really looking to work with the community on how we can reimagine this eastern side of JJ Walker Park. So the Tony Dapolito site, the outdoor pool, and think about how it can best function to provide recreational value to the community. That can be thinking about amenities. What's there now? What's the condition? What would the community like to see? Thinking about circulation and accessibility. There's a lot there at JJ Walker Park, particularly at that side, and how all those pieces work together and where there might be opportunities for improvements. And we would like to also seek your input tonight and going forward on ideas for programming at the future of that site. So on the next slide, we're just zooming in directly on this area that's in color. So we are seeking to improve, reimagine, and reconstruct the eastern side of the park, working with the community, which will involve demolition of the existing recreation center building and outdoor pool. The site will remain a park. Any future improvements will be for park purpose, for public park access. Improvements would be modern, accessible recreational amenities. We would like to explore building a new enhanced outdoor pool aquatics area, and really enhancing what's there now as far as aquatics. We will be seeking funding for this project. We will look to return to you when we have updates on that funding, as well as opportunities for ideas for programming to inform site design. And again, any future reconstruction project will consider how to honor the history of the site, the building, of course, the context of the neighborhood, and feasibility of preserving historic elements along 7th Avenue and Clarkson Street. So we will be back. We will look to hear your input tonight and going forward on a future park restoration, park reconstruction project. And I think there's just one last slide. So just bring us back to that visual again of the park amenities in the neighborhood and seeing kind of the different moving pieces. So restoring and expanding indoor recreation, we hear you on that. That is happening at 388. It responds to the CB2 request for the recreation center there. New York City Parks, it's envisioned that New York City Parks will be managing this rec center. So it will have a New York City Parks sign. It will have New York City Parks membership. It'll be run just like a city recreation center. And it is exciting because it also expands the footprint of parks in the neighborhood, what parks the agency can offer you, and the opportunities that the community has for recreation in the area. And it is a creative first collaboration with HPD, as far as HPD and parks working together on co-locating a city recreation center in a mixed-use development. And more more conversation to be had, and definitely want to take questions in a minute. But going back as far as addressing, looking how to restore and enhance and improve outdoor recreation, we are looking to focus that at Tony Dapolito and the JJ Walker Park site. And working with you to reimagine recreation amenities there. Again, it's the recreation center, the pool, which is closed. There's the playground in very close proximity, which we understand is also very well used, well loved, and worn, and could use some improvements. There's the mural, of course, which has restoration needs. There's a spray shower, somewhat dated, and spray showers are something that we are doing in very creative ways across the city that may not be like the traditional spray shower, but more of a play area with water, and the handball courts with pickleball use. So we would like to explore building an aquatics, really enhancing the outdoor pool, building a new outdoor pool there essentially, as well as making enhancements to some of the immediately adjacent recreation amenities on that side of the park. And so we will, of course, continue to provide the temporary stabilization for the building to support it and shore it up in the meantime. So, and we will look to seek community input and ideas for future site programming. So I'll just close by saying that we really are looking to plan for and deliver on meaningful recreational improvements to this neighborhood, considering everything that's going on here. And do it in a way that supports not only just this current community, but future generations' needs. So that is the end of our presentation, and we are going to collectively take comments.
Okay, we'll
Valerie, I'd like to give a little bit of history that was to go at the beginning before we go for questions.
Janelle, before you get going, let me just point out there are a few other people in the room I wanted to point out. Steve, would you introduce yourself? Thank you. And Steve is the Chief of Staff for the Manhattan Parks Department, Manhattan Borough Parks Department. And I know there were some elected officials or representatives. I saw Nicole Barth is here from Council Member Botcher's office. There she is. And Tracy, I saw Tracy is sitting right next to her. Yeah, from Assembly Member Glick's. There are, who else is here? Oh, thanks for attending today. Yeah. Okay, I think we're right about at 73, 75 in the room, and there are about 97 online. We want to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions. We're going to do it in this order. If the elected officials, I'm going to turn it back over to Chenault, then Parks and Waterfront Committee members can ask questions, Landmarks Committee members can ask questions, and Land Use Committee members can ask questions. Other members of the board, there are at least 5 or 6 in the room I see, and there are another 5 on Zoom. And then we'll open it up to the public, first the in-person, and then people on Zoom. But it didn't take that long, so we do have some time. There's also some members of the press here. I don't know if you want to call yourself out, but you probably could tell because you have a big camera. Yeah. Thanks for coming. Okay, Chenault, let me turn it back to you.
Yes, there are a lot of people here tonight whom we've never seen before. and were not at the previous meeting. I've just compared the list. I'd like to say a little bit about the history of the building and from the landmarks point of view. The center is located at Greenwich Village Extension Number 2 Historic District, designated in 2010. A look at the map of the district will show that it appears to be especially curious gerrymandering. This is because the community was interested in having the building included in the extended district, and when the boundaries were drawn, the decision was made to add a portion of the block to the south of St. Luke's Place on 7th Avenue South, extending to Clarkston Street. This includes the center and the adjacent library building, as well as an undistinguished apartment building on the north corner. As a building of architectural and historic worth, it's classified as a contributing building and rather than an individual landmark. This makes little difference in that it enjoys the protection status of a contributing building in a landmark district. And a couple other points about the public and other comments. It won't be unfamiliar to hear one of these meetings that everyone is encouraged to be as brief as possible. The elected officials will have 5 minutes to speak. Members of the public will have 2 minutes each. The time is limited, and we will hear from as many members of the public who have signed up to speak as there is time. It would be a great help in moving along if those whose points have been raised with previous speakers to simply signal agreement. Anyone who does not speak, as well as those who do, are encouraged to leave written comments through the CB2 website. These will be received through February 14th as a record of this meeting. We're guests of a public school, and the way that public schools don't function at night, at 8:15 the lights are scheduled to go off, and staff are standing by to restore them, so be calm. Thank you. Valerie, if you'll
Thank you,
begin.
Shan. Yeah. Chanel, can you just clarify? We had a question. When the building is a contributing building in a landmark district, is that the exterior and the interior?
That is the landmarks only is concerned with the exterior of a building. As a community board and with the part of our committee charge, which is actually the name is the Landmarks and Aesthetics Committee, we often comment and on interiors, and as members of the community and the board were interested in interiors, and that is not so much a point now because there is nothing growing out of this meeting that will be a landmarks recommendation. That will come later. In
Okay,
general, the landmarks committee only responds to applications to the landmarks commission in its normal course of work. This
Yeah,
is a
thanks.
community interest part of the landmarks committee.
Okay, elected officials or representatives, do you want to say anything before we turn it over? Okay. Thank you. Okay, okay, oh, thanks for attending. Can we pose the questions to all three of you? Okay, yeah, there were a few things that were highlighted in the walkthrough that you didn't mention. Can you discuss the staircase and the elevators?
Probably a bit on.
Yeah. Please
Hi.
introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Benjamin Conable. I'm Deputy Director of Engineering for Capital Projects at Parks Department. I'm a professional engineer and member of the American Preservation Technology International. And so the question was regarding two structural features of the building in terms of its use. There's a central stair that people have been in the building are aware of. It's a marble stair, an open marble stair that circulates through the building, and then also the elevator. I'm going to start with the elevator, which to some extent is, from my point of view, a little bit more important. The elevator is a very small elevator. It is not capable of holding a stretcher for emergency response to people on higher floors. It is the case that, people who use gyms sometimes need emergency services, and emergency services that require stretchers are not available in this building in the normal way that we build modern buildings. Simultaneously, the discussions that Chief Burns has described to you about the way that the grid of the building is laid out means that expansion of that elevator is not possible without removal of a column. We've done a study of it, and so in the context of the Guastavino structural system in the 1908 building, which is where the existing elevator is, there's no opportunity to expand that. Similarly, and this is really an architecture thing, but I can go ahead and talk to it. That central staircase is non-legal as a fire egress, the way that we build buildings today to protect people in the case of fire emergencies in a building. It is not isolated from the building, and so any reconstruction of the building at the scale that is required, which is to say, from the building code standpoint, more than 50% of the value of the building, automatically triggers a reconstruction that brings the entire building up to all code standards, including that lovely central staircase, which could then therefore no longer be maintained in the way that it is in terms of the aesthetics of the interior of the building.
Yeah, thanks. That was great. While you're here, when we did the walkthrough, you explained something to me that was really helpful. Maybe everyone understands, but you explained how when untreated steel, I think you said when it corrodes, it expands. And we'd heard about some tests that were done, but we got to see you took off some of the brick and you showed how the steel had expanded and it was pushing the bricks out.
Yeah, I can talk to that. So the building was not poorly built and in its time, but it was certainly built with the technology of the time, and our technology, especially with regard to water infiltration on the exterior of the building and the way that we protect the structure of the building today. We certainly have made significant advances in that regard. So to the chair's point, basically the minute that the building was built, the weather was beginning the deterioration process that has proceeded for more than 100 years on some portions of the building, specifically the Guastavino portions, and nearly that amount of time on the west addition. And so what happens is the water, especially on the north side and the west side, which is protected by trees, enters the building, enters into the brick. It soaks on the steel that is the structure of the building. It deteriorates that steel. That steel corrodes, and as it corrodes, it expands. As it expands, it fractures the building around it, the delicate masonry and stonework, and pushes it off of the building. And so we saw that on the north side. This is in the recent capital project that reconstructed the north staircase. We saw in our investigation that, in fact, the significant portions of the steel are completely separated and falling completely apart. It is quite dramatic. And you really see that the steel is right behind the first layer of bricks, and is coming apart and pushing the building apart.
You got to do the Colosseum in Rome example.
Yeah. So okay, I could do that. Yeah. So that the dome structure that overtops that basketball court, that's a Guastavino vault. It's made out of terracotta tiles. It's about that thick total. I'm holding for people who can't see me. It's about 6 inches thick, and it is also supporting the roof above it. Now, as with every dome, as it exists, it wants to spread out and flatten.
The thing that's holding it, keeping it from spreading out and flattening is a ring of steel around the outside. If you think about the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., with its amazing dome, that Capitol building, the dome is held up by a ring of giant chain in that example. In this example, it's held up by a ring of steel beams that are connected together. And on that north side of the building, those steel beams are fully separated from each other. And that has allowed that dome to begin to split. And that is why the building is a structurally compromised building. Now, again, we shored the building and it is safe for us to be inside it, but we've done walkthroughs with the Department of Buildings Forensic Engineering Unit. And it's worth mentioning that our consultant on the project, who's done the investigation of the Gustavino and in fact, the rest of the building, is Silman, now a T.Y. Lin company. Silman employs a man named Derek Trelstead, who is one of the foremost authorities on Gustavino throughout the world, and also definitely throughout New York, including work on our own 79th Street boat basin, the Oyster Bar in Grand Central, and St. John the Divine. So he's really one of the foremost engineering authorities on Gustavino, and he is the one who has led our efforts to understand the condition, understand its severity, protect the building and the public from in the way that we have.
Thanks. Let me turn it over to questions from Parks Committee members who are here.
You want to start? No. Hi, I'm Frederica Siegel. I've been on the Parks Committee since 2012. I want to say, Trish, that you were right about the 4 resos that land use has passed. And what Rich was talking about was the ones that land use has passed, Parks has passed, and Landmarks has passed. So you're both right. It's great to think about the synapses between 388 and a new, I don't know whether to call it a building or a cabana at the site of Dappolito. Parks has come to us, the Parks Department has come to the Parks Committee in 2013, 2016, 2017, 18, 21, and 20. And starting in 2017, the Parks Committee started to push back against any future repairs. We were upset about no master plan. We were upset about the amount of money that it was taking. And there were times when Parks Department came to us asking for us to pass a reso approving of the work, and we declined to do that. So that's just a little bit of history. My question is, if this is going to remain a park, which is what the gentleman started by saying and what one of you repeated, is it going to be an open space? Is it going to be an open space with a pool? There are 12-story buildings all around Dappolito, and it's currently what, a 3 or 4-story building? So is it going to be a 1-story building that has access to an outdoor pool, or, is there a vision for this actual building?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that first, and thank you so much, Frederica. You can't pull anything past you ever, so I appreciate the record keeping. So this is where we're just not going to have the answers for you. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
Frustrating, but
that's all right.
But what I'll say is
If
that
it's a process,
it is.
We're happy to be involved in the process.
So I would love to tell you
It's the best
exactly
answer you could give us, actually.
I would love to tell you exactly what it will look like. I would love to tell you to give you a proposal. I would love to give you a proposal. Because we are still seeking funding and still looking to seek and getting input from the community, we frankly just don't have all of that hashed out yet. I can commit to you that as we receive funding for this, as we get further along in the planning, I will be back here. We will be back here. We will be talking to you about more of the specifics. Right now, what I can tell you is that the one thing that you're not getting at 388 is outdoor pool. We won't hide behind that. So, and we also understand that the Keith Haring mural is incredibly important and frankly, a little specific to outdoor swimming, if you look at the content of it. So that is very significant to us. I can't commit to anything right now, but certainly in our minds, we're thinking about outdoor pool as a future or aquatics as the future kind of component to this. And when we talk about pools, you also talk about facilities to go with them. Any of our pools needs a public restroom of lockers. They need some facilities. You need pumps. You need all of these kind of pieces, the guts of the pool, all of these pieces to it that are going to be incorporated into that. From there, we just frankly don't have all of the answers at this point. This is where we are when looking at the structural integrity of the building that we have. Certainly in the future, I can tell you what the recipe is to put an outdoor pool in any spot in the city. And we look at this as kind of parks use. So parks use is including recreation, it includes open space, it includes playgrounds, it includes all of that.
Well, it's great to have the city come to us with a project that isn't already completely baked.
Yeah, it's definitely not baked.
Right.
but
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, hi there. I first want, I'm Susanna Aaron. I'm the vice chair of this committee. I also chair the Human Services Committee. Grown up in this neighborhood, I first wanted to express gratitude that you've heard the community and have committed to not abandoning this space as a public use. I think as a neighborhood, we always feel a little, that's always our biggest fear. We're always a little bit under siege by developers interested in creating things for private use. So this commitment to public use is noteworthy. I first have to express my personal affection. I see this and my heart breaks. I mean, not only did my kids play basketball here, but I did too. And I swam in that pool when I was a kid. So to see it falling apart breaks my heart. But that said, there's more than one priority here. There's more than one consideration. I can appreciate that this building was never really built to be a rec center. It was cobbled together. And as much as I love it, if you were going to start from scratch, you might do things differently. And I think that if I had to choose between the needs of our community, what we need, and what we like, what we love. I mean, I love this building, but I think that I would put the needs for recreation above the needs of a building. That said, there are historical elements that I think would be nice to be able to preserve. You've mentioned the pool and the Keith Haring mural, of course. And I also, when I hear that it's Gustavino tile, it doesn't sound, it'd be so great if you can preserve some element of that, because that does feel like something that is a wonderful enhancement in our city. I had one question, which is that next door, you've mentioned that there's a library next door. That library is also pretty dilapidated, and that library is also on city land. And so in all the interagency conversations, I am wondering if there's an opportunity for a conversation about a way of maybe improving the services and the facility of the library.
Yeah, that is a new question.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the question. And I think that I want to take it in two parts. The first piece being, we went through in extensive detail tonight the status of the building, and a lot of the pieces of it are beautiful and beloved. And I think a key takeaway for me, at least personally, and Ben, you can kick me because you're an engineer and I'm only an urban planner, is that a lot of the components simply couldn't be built or rebuilt as they are in the building now, given a lot of the code compliance issues, whether it's emergency related scenarios or accessibility related needs in terms of spatial requirements within the building. And that was an absolutely key consideration in why we wanted to give you such an in-depth update on what the status of the building is, the structural components, and then also the functionality elements of it as well. We have had conversations with the library about this building, and will continue to. I think that there is a potential for synergy there with a project here, but that I wouldn't say that we're at a point yet where we could absolutely say with any certainty even what the thought is for the Tony Dapolito building in and of itself. Other than that, we can confirm outright we're not looking at a developer approach here. This is to remain within a park's use.
Just one quick follow-up question. If you're talking to the library, who is that? Is that NYPL? Is
NYPL.
NYPL, which is a city, not quite city. Okay.
Basically, exactly.
All right,
Yes.
thank you.
But yes, we have just one last element there. We absolutely have to work with NYPL regardless of the outcome, given the proximity of the Tony Dapolito building and the structural challenges, to make sure that they are looped in. We're trying to work hand in hand across a number of city agencies on this project.
Rich, Susan Gammon wishes to speak, and she is obliged to leave to go to another meeting. So could she be elevated now?
Yep.
We'll come then back to the rest
Yep.
of the Landmarks Committee
Okay.
later.
Yep. Go for it. And then we have one in the room, and then Shirley, I want to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for letting me jump the line here. I really appreciate it. I'm Susan Cami. I'm the vice chair of the Landmarks Committee. And, thank you for your presentation. And I appreciate your wanting to have community input. But I am very concerned about when you spoke about the hearing the community part, when you said that you heard that the community is quote unquote seeking preservation opportunities. And I think that's a mischaracterization, and I think somewhat trivializing of the preservation point of view. We're not opportunistically looking for a situation. What we are interested in is an even application of the landmarks law, which has particular concerns that we all share about something that we all know as demolition by neglect. And our concern is that the law be evenly applied here, and that this obviously is in a historic district, and there are particular rules governing when things can be demolished. My question for you is there, does LPC have a different standard for city-owned properties regarding demolition than it does for, say, a private property owner or a developer? Or have they indicated that they're willing to lower their standards in some way in order to accommodate this demolition?
I'll just say, I don't know if you can hear me, but we as a public agency have to bring all of our buildings through. You can't hear me.
I can hear you.
We have to go through all the same processes as a private building. I've worked in both the private and the public sector. We have to bring it to LPC, and anything of this nature would have to go to a public hearing. So we would be working with LPC 100% on this.
Okay, so we can assume that as
That
far
answer your
as you know,
question?
the law is will be evenly applied here. You don't fall under a special silo because it's a public property.
No, we
Okay.
don't.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Hi, Eddie Siegel on the Parks Committee. Thank you for the very thorough presentation, and I appreciate your commitment to maintaining the recreation space. I know you have emphasized that this is still on flex. I'm wondering if there's any consideration after all recreation needs are met, there's opportunity for affordable housing over whatever remaining indoor structures might still exist on the property.
Back to me again. So I'll say that is absolutely something that was considered. And we determined that maintaining the park's use here is the better path forward, and to approach the affordable housing component as the 388 co-location with the new rec center. Understanding that affordable housing is a key component of the city. It's something that most neighborhoods are particularly interested in. It is a high priority of this administration. However, based on our investigations of this site, we didn't think that from the analysis that we did, that it was an appropriate potential path forward, and that the better path was to maintain the site within parks use for potentially expanded outdoor aquatic recreation.
Shirley, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, Rich. I actually have 4 questions. They're basic ones. So should I just pose one at a time and get the answers?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Go for it.
So the first, the Parks team spoke about going after funding. So the first question is, what funding sources do you anticipate? And what funding sources maybe, hopefully, you've secured? So that's my first question. So should we wait for an answer for that one? Or should I just?
Yeah, okay, so hi Shirley. So the funding sources would be coming from City Hall, and that's where I expect, although if you have any suggestions for other sources of funding, I would happily go after them. And we are actively looking for this. I can give you an update as soon as we get one, but this is an ongoing conversation that we're looking to try to solve for ASAP.
So Patricia, I'd just like to follow up on that. When you all spoke about it, you sounded optimistic. So is that optimistic?
Oh, I mean, I try to be an optimistic person. I think that it's really helpful that we have support from City Hall and that we have the Deputy Mayor's office who's been working closely with this. I think it's optimistic that we're multiple agencies working on all of this, all in close coordination. I think that it's very promising that everybody seems to be on the same page with the needs for this community. So that's where my optimism comes from. But frankly, I can't speak for anything further than that, other than a commitment to openly talking to you about and the community about where we stand with funding as soon as we get any other updates.
Thank you, Patricia. Okay, so the next thing, and I think that's almost led to this kind of question, is timeline. So far it sounds like it's pretty loose, but I'm just wondering, do you have specific timelines for each part of this process? For instance, obviously, outreach, finishing the study, and then, of course, finally, construction.
Yep. So timeline is for parks, we don't do projects until we have full funding in hand. So we don't have a timeline on any sort of new piece for Tony Dapolito at the site as is. Excuse me, but the 388 portion of the project, there is certainly a big timeline on that. I believe that the RFP should be released any day now. And then there's a set timeline for the amount of time that people have to respond to that RFP. The next time you should be like the next kind of point for this, I suspect, will be when we're talking about potential, or what goes into the 388 project in more kind of specifics is where I think the next kind of piece to this will come from, if I were to make a guess.
The next question is about the historical elements. And there were a lot of references made to the Guastavino tile, which I think we all really value and hope that you can save it. So this question really is, I wonder, what elements at this point do you think you can save? And particularly in terms of the Guastavino tile, where can you save it? Where is there the potential to save Guastavino?
I wish,
the other that you may have chosen.
I'm certainly taking notes about comments here, and we'll have more conversations with the Landmarks Committee, I'm sure, about some of this. I unfortunately don't have a lot of specifics because it certainly kind of depends on the overall funding for our project and when you talk about preservation, and it also talks about what goes next in that space. So I unfortunately can't commit or give you any more specifics around what we're looking at, but I do hear, I think Jesslyn has said before, the exterior from 7th to Clarkson, that exterior component, we know that there's a lot of components there that are very significant. We know that this is a contributing building, and we'll look to see what is possible when we are undertaking this next project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Number 4, cost analysis.
I see.
And just wondered if you'll be ready to give us some cost analyses and comparative costs, I guess, anytime soon.
Oh, I missed that one. Cost analysis of
the project, or different parts of the project, and comparisons of different parts of the project in cost terms. Anytime soon? Anytime soon?
I'm not sure if a cost and like we could talk about when we have a budget for another project, we will give a kind of we can give a detailed report of what these elements will like overall, but can be budgeted for. I don't know if I have any additional cost analysis for for what's standing right now. But I can definitely, as part of any project, we come before the community board, we talk about the overall budget, we can talk about the components of that, and I can look into more details. Is that what, do you have anything else?
Just Shirley, first off, long time, been about 10 years since I last saw you and you changed up committees on me. The one piece, the one piece that I do want to talk to about in terms of your questions on timeline is the 388 Hudson piece, where we expect the RFP release basically imminently. And the key component there being that when we laid out a lot of the potential goals for the facility, this was the fastest, most efficient means of bringing back indoor recreation for the community, which I know is a critical component, is something the community board supported previously and something that, you know, the Parks Department really took to heart. So we're hopefully going to be able to speak to more timeline on that in short order. And that is the one piece where we really can hopefully come back to you in not very long with more timeline updates.
Okay. Can we
I would like to encourage everything to try to move along. We have an enormous number of people from the public signed up, and this is their meeting. And the sooner
let me turn it.
Thank you.
Okay, let me turn it over to you. Chanel will turn it over. I think that's done with parks. Let me turn it over to landmarks.
Okay. I have two questions that I like to put that first that I think will sort of set the landmarks tone. Is it the position of the department that the structure cannot be restored to a usable condition that permits it to be legally used in some fashion, perhaps with a different sort of programming from that which it's been used for before?
Can the structure be restored to serve the same purpose as before, essentially, right? Or no, different.
I'm talking about the building. If we think of the structure, and
Okay,
it has
so
to be obviously legally usable, is it the position of the parks that it can't be restored to legal use of some description?
I wouldn't say can't be, but the question of how do we respond to, oh, sorry, excuse me. I wouldn't say it can't be, but I would say that it's the Parks Department's responsibility to responsibly use our resources to the best of our ability. Is this building, is this site, is JJ Walker, in addition to Tony Dapp, serving the most amount of people the best way possible? And that's really the question.
Okay, thank you. And has the deterioration of the building worsened significantly in the years that it has been closed? Whatever.
It's been closed since, oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, Chanel, please.
The answer to that is no, more or less. There is ongoing deterioration, but it's taken 100+ years to get to this point. So the deterioration that is happening while we're having the conversation is very slow and not particularly changing any outcomes as we have the conversation.
So that 5 years ago, we would have been having the conversation we're having tonight.
Unequivocally, the conditions that were identified in the current project existed 5 years ago, and in fact existed 20 years ago.
Okay. Valerie, could you recognize members of the committee?
What's up? Brian, you ready?
Brian?
Yes, thank you. I'm Brian Pape. Should be on, and yeah, okay. Is that here? Okay. So, Brian Pape of the Landmarks Committee, and I've been working
Try this one. Maybe you have to hold it.
Really close to my mouth. Okay. All right. So, as we've been discussing this in committee, we certainly are encouraged that the city no longer seems to be just throwing up their hands and saying we cannot restore the building because it really is a historic building that needs to be restored. However, it seems that the ADA compliance is being used as an excuse for not bringing the building up to code, when in fact, there are lots of exceptions and ways of creatively working around the design elements in a historic building in order to still be safe and as compliant as possible. And so I didn't hear very much of that. And I think that that really needs to be explored. And I think one of Chanel's questions was, how can we legally bring it back to use, restore it back to use, even if some of the interior programming changes? And certainly, I could certainly see how we could reinforce some of the structural elements and use the spaces a little differently. But I'm wondering also if any exterior space along Clarkson has been considered for some of this mechanical utility, anything supporting the pool. It seems like there's some space right along the sidewalk that could extend the street front, the building front, with an extension there. Just things like that. There's so many maybe small things that could be done to help keep the building as usable as possible without changing the historic appearance.
I'll let some of our folks from the engineer experts kind of weigh in here, but I also want to just be super clear about this. It is definitely I certainly will say that when we receive funding for another project to reconstruct this area, we will certainly look into the preservation of what we could potentially do with the Tony Dapp site. But it is the opinion of the Parks Department that the structure as is with those 3 buildings combined is very much immovable and inflexible to the point where it wouldn't really serve those kind of programmatic needs and of course ADA services as we see it. And that's kind of where we stand right now.
Yes, I recognize, I'm acknowledging that
Yeah.
statement and those criteria. And so I'm just encouraging that you go a next step further and say, okay, if it can't be kept just the way it is and restore the structure, can we approach it differently and work with the interior spaces differently and solve some of these problems?
I will also just respond to your other piece before I hand it over to Rebecca or Ben or somebody to talk about some of the limitations piece to this. But I will also say that in terms of facilities needed to serve the pool, and I'm just learning about this, but I do feel like I know a good amount about pools. The amount of pumps and tanks and infrastructure needed to take care of our pools is significant. Significant as in at least from me to Mark Diller size, like big amounts of space are needed. So it is not something that we generally have out on the sidewalk or out in small spaces. You really do need a significant amount of space to have the infrastructure needed to serve a pool. And that's even if you just kept the pool the size as it is. If you were talking about making something bigger, it's tremendous. The Central Park pool is going to reopen this year. We've been looking at this a lot. The amount of infrastructure needed to really do that and serve the public and keep everybody safe is, from a layman, very significant. And in terms of space, it's quite a lot. But I'm going to pass it over
I
to
think
the.
we are badly behind on time, that these more technical things could be replied to in writing to the committee, and we'll share them publicly. If we could just move on to the next person, please. Thank you.
Anyone else
Oh,
from landmarks? I think
Anyone?
that might be it. If
Okay,
if
is there?
we're done with landmarks, there was one, I forgot Coral. We missed Coral. Coral, are you on?
Yeah, mine is quick. I had two things. One, we had discussed in a prior meeting, given the lengthy closure and expected lengthy closure without a detailed timeline, having parks secure recreational space to be available to the community in the interim while we wait. And we just want to make sure that that's not lost and ask if in fact there's anybody working on that. And separately, for the tiles, I would suggest maybe using some of them in the pool area at 388 because it'd be a nice reference point just decoratively. And then you have the subways right there, and then Hudson Square is opening a new subway on 6th Avenue and Spring Street on the downtown side. That's going to be wheelchair accessible, and that might, if someone has not yet provided the artwork there, that might be an opportunity as well.
I'll just respond to those very quickly. So it's a lovely idea to reuse the tiles from Tony Dapolito into either 388 or another project. I think that we can certainly look into that. There's, I'm sure, some issues that we should look into around salvaging those. But what I'll say is most
just like not to use all of them, like to reference them, just so for the people that want the preservation of the Gustavon, there's an exhibit of like the 5 that were salvageable.
Okay, yeah, so we can definitely look and see what's possible. And then in terms of interim recreational space, we've certainly been talking about this, but I will also just say that in terms of available resources, it's a question of what we have available to us, how much money we can be putting into a new project, getting us faster and quicker towards new reconstructed Tony Dapolito site versus something that would be an interim measure, which I frankly also don't actually know if it would be possible. But as we continue to talk about this, as we continue to get further along in the planning process, I'm happy to come back with any kind of ongoing efforts looking into this, or any sort of report that we have on what, if anything, could be possible.
Let's keep moving. The next in line, we said anyone from land use. I don't see anyone.
Is there no one else from landmarks who wishes?
I'm sorry.
There's no one else.
I'm going to cede my time as a landmarks member to the public so we can get to that, but continue through the.
Okay, anybody in land
use? I'd like to very briefly close the landmarks with a some slides that Valerie has to show. That I felt that the presentation was extremely defective because it didn't show the beauty of the building as it exists. And we have a few slides, and Valerie, if you would just.
I'm sorry, Chanel, I don't have slides, and we're gonna lose the Manhattan commissioner, I know, in a few minutes. So I think if there's anything to share from that walkthrough, we should put it on the CB2 website. So
yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, so I'll turn.
All right, land use, and then anybody in the room, I see Patricia or Janine or anybody would like to speak from the community board. Is Carter here? Carter, yeah. Donna, do I see Donna? There you go, Kate. All right, fine. If you, I'm just going through the steps there, Katie. People want to join the board there, but applications are open. So then they would get to go ahead. Okay, now we're into, all right, that's it. And no members of the board. Okay, we have a list. I'm going to turn over to Valerie.
Okay, so we're going to start with Marianne Arisman, Samer Omar, Andrew Berman, Dina Tassie Winter, and Sandra Cohn. So I'm going to call you up in 5s. So you can just kind of, you need to move to the front, because I know if you're sitting in the back, it's going to take a few minutes. So start making your way up. I'm going to call the next 5 after that. Mark Felix, Jacqueline Chabot, Judith Silverstein, Tequila Minsky, Karen Sund. Someone has a really beautiful signature and I can't read it. His name is John. Beatrice, maybe John S. So it's 12. So you'll need to come up to the mic. So maybe the mic is right here. So maybe the parks folks may want to, well, there's a microphone stand for people to give public testimony here. Oh yeah, stand back, sure. Okay, so please state your name, state what neighborhood you live in, or what neighborhood you're associated with, and then and you have 2 minutes. I'm going to do it. I've got it. So you can go. And
Okay.
please state your name,
Thank
first
you.
and last, and
Marianne
neighborhood.
Arisman. I'm the chair of the St. Luke's Place Block Association. We're a one block of 15 townhouses built approximately 175 years ago. We're a few years older than Tony Dapp, but we're standing strong because generations before us and many people who live on the block right now have maintained those buildings. And if we hadn't, we would be cited by the city for demolition by neglect. Shame on the city for not maintaining this beautiful building and adapting it over the years. I urge the city or the Parks Department. I'm delighted to hear that it will remain in parks and recreation use, but I'm very frightened that we'll lose this beautiful building, which is the southern entrance to the historic district. It's an important and prominent building in our community. And I urge you to think outside the box to preserve it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next.
Hi, my name is Summer Omar. I live in Soho, and I'm also here on behalf of the political club Downtown Independent Democrats. Our executive board, ahead of tonight's meeting, issued a resolution where we strongly condemned the demolition of this rec center, and we called for its repair and maintenance. I just want to say, I don't think there's any dispute that this building needs repair. It's old. It's been there for more than 100 years. And I came to this meeting because I genuinely wanted to learn more about whether and why repair had been so summarily ruled out. But I didn't see any information. I came with a notebook and a pen. I genuinely wanted to hear some numbers, some figures, some engineering information about why you can't repair the building. And no one is saying try to preserve it, in every possible way, but what effort has been made to repair it in any way? And let me just quickly say, this facility has existed in some way for more than 100 years in New York City, which means it survived World War II, the 1970s financial crisis, the 2008 financial crisis, and we're living through what many people are saying is the second Gilded Age. So I'm having a hard time believing that there aren't resources to repair this, especially when the city spent more than $150 million repairing another rec center in Brooklyn. Thank you.
You don't need to respond. No. Just, I think, let me just clarify, if the building were to be repaired, is it true that a modern, cost-efficient to maintain and run functional center that is up to the specifications of code and has the features of a modern rec center, could that fit in the footprint that exists today?
But it doesn't need to. There's a new recreation
And
center
that
that's being
question
built
wasn't to
across the
you. The
street.
question wasn't to you. It
Well-
was to the parks people. I just wanted to reiterate that what I thought they said was it has to expand west.
So in order to meet modern code and modern code, accessibility code, and circulation throughout the building, we could not offer the same programming in that building if we kept it in the same build, within that same footprint. We would have to, it just wouldn't be possible.
But could you provide different kinds of recreational programming in a restored version of that building?
Okay. I'm sure that could be studied, but
And why is it not being
Hey,
looked
this is
at?
not a back and forth yet, Andrew. If we could just, we've had the comment, you had a question, so we're moving back.
Let's go back. Who's the next person to ask?
I think
questions?
Andrew's the next one
Right,
to
so
speak, but we just can't have this back and forth.
So I'm Andrew Berman from Village Preservation. Let me say that I think it's important progress that the Parks Department is now saying that the site will remain for parks use. That is not what they were saying last year. And it's basically thanks to folks like you, as well as the community board, that they have now changed their position on that. We need to get them to change their position about demolition as well. There is nothing that I saw here tonight that is indicative of a building that cannot be repaired and restored. Nothing that they described is unique to this building. The public theater was built in 3 phases for vastly different purposes than it's used today. It was left empty and abandoned for years. It is now a thriving, disabled, accessible, world-class public theater. There is no reason why, if the basketball courts are no longer ideal to be here and they're moved across the street to 388 Hudson Street, that it can't be turned into the weight room in a new recreation center. Same thing for the swimming pool. There is absolutely nothing that you are describing that is inconsistent with being able to restore this building and keep it in public use as a recreation center. And by the way, if a private applicant came forward and said, I have this old building and it's rusted and it's falling apart and, I just don't want to have to repair it. I'd rather tear it down and build another one. We would hopefully laugh them out of the room. So the fact that the city is coming to us, which has vastly more resources than the average owner of a landmark building, is saying, oh, we're just not capable of doing this, is frankly beyond credulity. And as was pointed out before, the mayor recently gleefully announced that he's putting $160 million towards the restoration of a recreation center in Brooklyn. This should not cost even remotely that amount of money. So, we really have to continue to push back on the city here, and not just because of this site. Even if you don't care about the Tony D'Appolito Center, if we say that it's acceptable for anybody, especially the city, to say, look, we didn't take good care of this building, we didn't think far enough ahead about what its needs were, it's deteriorated, and now we want to just tear it down, and that's an acceptable rationale for destroying a landmark building, we're going to be in really, really serious trouble here. And if that was the approach that we took, there'd be no Jefferson Market Library, there'd be no public theater, there'd be no archives building just up the block from here. Our entire neighborhood is built on the understanding that you can take old buildings, put a little work into them, put a little money into them, and turn them into something great and new. And that is what should be done here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, state your name. Oh, okay. Please use your microphone.
Sure. We just want to clarify that the $160 million in Brooklyn for Brownsville is actually a demolition and rebuild. We are actually demolishing that existing building and rebuilding it because of a lot of the same issues that we have in terms of aging over time, intense structural deterioration, and not being able to bring this building back to the standards. So I just want to also say is that we do not in any way take demolition lightly. We do not. That is not what we want to
come on. There's really not supposed to be a back and forth here, please.
Okay.
Should I?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Hi, my name is Dina Tass-Winter, and I work for Village Preservation. And I'm here speaking on behalf of the organization and also as a lifelong village resident. I want to build on Andrew's remarks and briefly speak to the significance of the history of the building. So as we know, the Tony D'Appolito Recreation Center is located within the Greenwich Village Historic District Extension 2. And as Chenault touched upon, it's extremely important that the district bounds were designed to encompass the rec center and the Hudson Park Library. This indicates that the Landmarks Preservation Commission found this building to be particularly important and wanted to make sure that it was protected. The center is also a contributing building to the South Village Historic District, listed in the State and National Register of Historic Places. And the local, state, and federal listings all emphasize that the area is significant for its immigrant heritage and working class architecture. And the Tony Dapolito Rec Center is a prime representative of these histories. It would set a terrible precedent for the city to demolish a landmark building for which they have always had ownership and have a responsibility, which is a word that you've all used tonight, to maintain or, if needed, adapt the building. And it's almost unbelievable that we're even having this conversation right now, jumping to demolition when we should be discussing how best to preserve the historic facades. As has been mentioned, the building was constructed in 1908 as one of about a dozen or so public bathhouses, and it's one of several that in the 1930s, the Parks Department, who owned these buildings this whole time, transitioned from strictly hygienic use to broader recreational use. And one such as the Asher Levy pool building on the east side is extant today and was recently adapted to continue to serve this purpose. As we know, the site is also an integral part of LGBTQ+ heritage, which is really important in the neighborhood with the herring mural that we all know and love. Architecturally, the building is a significant example of the colonial revival style, and it retains a high degree of integrity, as you can see in any of the photographs. Yes, it was constructed in phases, but that's, I'll wrap up right now. It's extremely common for buildings to be constructed in phases in the early 1900s, and countless landmarks of ours have been constructed in phases.
Thank you.
And continue to be maintained.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandra Cohn. Sandra Cohn.
Hello, my name's Sandra Cohn. I don't want to repeat the last 3 meetings I've been to, and I feel the same way.
Can you just speak
Again,
a little bit closer to the microphone?
Can you hear me?
I'm so sorry.
Now, okay. The whole emphasis again on demolition instead of how can we make this better? And basically, I'm just going to say something that has really occurred to me even more after the fires in California. We all were changed by COVID. Everything has changed. Our structure of community, of feeling, of doing anything. But one of the things that really started me thinking, listening to the comments about the residents in California, is what they are sobbing about is the loss of community. It's not just their house. It's not just the school. It's not just where they go to church or where they have a coffee. It's all of it together. And what this center was, it hooked us all in as a community. It's not that you can farm out one piece to this little residential building that's going to be, it's a small residential building. You can't have all of the functions happening at the same time with different ages, different people, you can't do that. And that is what a community needs, a space. It doesn't just need something on a computer. And we were hooked into that. I was hooked into that from the time I became a resident here 50 years ago. My son growing up and being born here was hooked into this. Essential part of his growing up, of his not only playing ball, but of becoming a counselor of the camp. But the most important thing is it hooked us as a community that we have lost through COVID, and at the same time lost Carmine Street. And that's what bothers me about some of the comments about modern, not modern standards or feasibility, is kind of an insult. So the running track was not modern standards.
Sandra, can you wrap it up?
So you have to go twice instead of once.
Thank you, Sandra.
I mean, there are things like
Thank
that.
you. Next, we're going to go on to Mark Felix.
Well, one more thing.
I'm sorry, Mark Felk. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're moving on. We're moving on to the next person. We're going on to Mark Felk. We do accept written comments at info@manhattancb2.org.
Mark Felix of Horatio and Hudson. I've been there since my mom brought me from Beth Israel Maternity Ward in 46. As a little boy, Ginsburg ate his dinner off of my plate. So my mom's been in culture of village all these years. I've been using the recreation center so many years that I got a bone spur in my shoulder from doing so many pull-ups. I have no nostalgic longings to keep every brick in the building. I just want the facility to be adequate. They said that the stairs aren't up to code, the elevator. I would like to see if, obviously it's very expensive to restore an old building like this to purpose. I would be happy to see a brand new building with the same facilities and better. And not a structure with a supposedly affordable housing. That's about it. Keep a recreational center there to purpose for the ball court for young men to play in on Friday nights. The guys play their ball where they throw what do you call it, where you throw a ball at. No, you throw it at each other and you try and duck the ball. Right, yes. And on Saturdays, I see the little kids getting lessons on how to play basketball. And the elderly people, they have and then generally, I want to see those maintained and in even better facilities and bigger. But on the same site, they could keep some of this tiles. That's very nice vaulted ceiling, but that's it. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Next we have Jacqueline. Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Shabbat, or known as Svatovich. I was a teacher at PS3. I live in a very old building on Morton Street. We work like hell to keep it in shape, and that's a community effort. And I think it's like decapitation to separate this building from the rest of the park. We would go from the building, from a basketball game, which, by the way, we could cozy up and watch very well. There was no, you said that it was too small to watch, the court was too small, but children learned on a small court and then they went on to bigger and better things. So taking this away from us, it's sort of like giving in to sort of this modern thing that everything has to be so perfect. It wasn't perfect, but it was so good and so communal and so wonderful. I don't understand why the Parks Department let it go. Slowly downhill, and that you don't care enough to find a way with brilliant engineers all around us to fix this building. It can be fixed just like other old buildings have been fixed. My building is one of them.
Thank you. Next we have Judith Silverstein. Okay, then Tequila Minsky.
Tequila Minsky. I live in Soho, and I guess Soho, the village. I see people here in the audience who I've met in the facility, in the swimming pool. I have danced with people who are in this room, in the gym. And I'm quoting one person I'm sitting next to who said, a lot of us are on the older side, and are we going to live to see any of the next generation of this facility? And I'd like to know a timeline. I'd like to know what the timeline is for any of this. I'm thrilled that Dappolito the footprint will stay in parks, but what do you have in mind for that if they don't fix it up? Or why don't you just remove the dome? If the dome is such a structural problem, why don't you just remove the dome and just do something else with the roof? And the other idea I had, since I'm a big swimmer and I've been going to Hamilton Fish, which is, by the way, a wonderful pool, why don't you take and build another aquatics thing on this new other property on the Hudson Side Street, which would allow a lot of other room for any other kind of rehabilitation that's going to take place in the building. And then you don't have to worry about if you're building a new aquatics, you can really start from scratch with a whole new aquatics program, which I'm a big swimmer. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Karen Sund, and then
I'm actually not Karen, I'm Barbara, but I'm actually just very
Okay.
quick to this.
I didn't call on you though. Did you sign up to speak?
This is some. No, you
Okay.
come up, Karen. No, it's come up.
No, I just didn't have you written down. So if you could sign in, that's fine. Okay, if you can just stop with the back and forth, that's
quickly,
fine.
I think
If you can just sign in. I just didn't call on you.
Okay.
So
sign in.
So yeah, I didn't call on you. So I'm sorry. If you
Okay.
can just hang back and then we're just trying to get through the list because people signed up. Okay, so next we have Judith Silverstein. Did she go? Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. There's a lot going on. Karen's son is not speaking. John with an S. It was a signature, so I can't read it. John S. Okay. Beatrice. I don't know. I can't read it. So maybe it's Stuart. Yeah, it's probably. I see a T in there. I did learn cursive and I can write in cursive. I can read it, but I cannot read yours. You may go.
Okay, I'm glad that they said the site will be just a recreation center and not affordable housing and all. If it was the new system, I'd really love a plan what this is going to be looking like. But the thing that bothers me most is that nobody seems to be up for challenges. I heard the word challenge mentioned at least 8 to 10 times. If you can't accept a challenge, you can't live. You got to find somebody that accepts a challenge and says, there's a way around this. I can fix this. Not somebody who says, oh, I can only find the problems. Everybody can find problems. They are easy. Solutions are what you need to look for. Otherwise, it's useless. I also heard the word mentioned salvage all the time. I don't like that either. It's renovation, a restoration. And I heard the word efficient used a number of times. It doesn't have to be the most efficient thing in the world. By the time you put the new building up, it's not going to be efficient anymore. Okay. Yeah, it's just look into it a little bit more, find out how much it's going to cost to renovate it versus tear it down, and we'll go from there.
All right.
Okay.
Ms. Stewart, Ms. Stewart, you had submitted something, you submitted a form in writing as well.
Yes.
Okay. You had questioned in that submission, you had some concerns about who had done the inspection. Do you still feel that the inspection should be done by an independent organization?
I think the engineer had to be on the up and up. I do prefer an independent inspection, especially in the sense that the engineer, I forgot to mention that point, didn't talk about all he talked about was the problems. He didn't talk about any of the solutions for those problems. And that was in the other statement, basically.
Great. Okay, let's.
No. You
Okay.
guys can go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Beatrice, I'm going to call the next kind of group. Beatrice with an F, Karen Kramer, Ross Kessler, Sandy Russo, Anna Shapiro. So if I'm calling your name, please come stand up so that way we can. I'm sorry. Okay. Beatrice with an F, last name, Karen Kramer, Ross Kessler, Sandy Russo, Anna Shapiro, Judith Marsh, Hannah Boyloff, Noel Massell, Renee DeSantis, Tom Mack, John Sosnowski, and John with a Y. So if I've called your name, you can come stand up and speak. So go ahead.
My name is, excuse me, my name is Anna Shapiro. I live in West Beth, and I completely agree with everything Andrew Berman said and quite a number of other people. I think that this is a case for adaptive reuse. Your points also were correct. It doesn't have to be the exact same uses as long as they're parks and recreation uses. The Guastavino Dome is very important historically. Those are being restored wherever they're found these days. There are probably private grants available for that kind of restoration. It would not necessarily have to come from the city. The marble staircase doesn't have to be the fire staircase and therefore could be preserved. And the indoor pool doesn't have to be saved at the expense of losing the rest of the building. So adaptive reuse is clearly the way to go. I just want to add, this should not have to be a fight between the residents of a community and our government and our agencies. I think it is great that you have listened to the community and now want to make this a park, as it's always been for a very long time. But you should be on our side. And I'm really glad you're listening now. That's really it.
Thank you so much. Okay, so next, did nobody else want to speak? So I've called all of the names and no one's standing up here. So Karen, Beatrice, okay. Beatrice, Karen Kramer, Ross Kessler. Okay, why don't you just come up, and there's somebody else who hadn't signed up yet that also wanted to speak. You can queue yourself up if here. Great, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Noelle Mazal. I live in West Village. I wanted to come up and say I urge you to, like other people have said, find more creative solutions for preservation. The facades of buildings in my neighborhood, I was born here and I still live here. The facades in this neighborhood are some of the most dearest things to me. I grew up going every summer to the pool at Tony Tap, and it was magic. I mean, as a child, it was wonderful to see the mural. It was incredible to see this ship of an empty pool inside during the summers. It was just like a sensual wonderland for a kid. But I was too young to see all of the places within the recreation center. And within this meeting, it's shown me that I still want to see these things. I still want to see the history within this building. I still want to see the building itself. I just urge you to find creative ways and creative solutions, because I understand and appreciate that it does need restoration, and it does have, the things have been deteriorating over time, may be by neglect by the city who owns it. So that's what I wanted to say. This is a really close thing to my heart. And I just wanted to say that the youth and the young people in this neighborhood really care for it and want to see it preserved. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next.
Yes, John Sosnowski. I live on Charlton Street, and I have my 17-year-old daughter with me right now. Just to put this in perspective, I can't be as articulate as Andrew on all the failings of the city with this, but my daughter is coming of political consciousness right now in this world. And, it sort of breaks my heart with everything else going on, but also breaks my heart in how the city actually disappoints in your uninventiveness on what you can do with a building that's been here. 40% of her life, that's been closed. She swam in there as a child. And if you look around this room, most of us have gray hair in this room. She's somebody who grew up in this neighborhood, and it's been abandoned to her. And it's really disappointing. And that's about it. Anyways.
Thank you so much. Next.
Hi. Don't know if you can hear me. My name is Maria Leão. I have been the executive director of a youth organization for many years. We have been running after-school programs, camp programs for children in this community, primarily children who attend PS3, but also PS41. And I can tell you, A, as a resident of this community, B, as a director of an organization that brings hundreds. Over the years, we have brought hundreds of children to the park, to J.J. Walker, to the recreation park, to the library, and used to have access to the facility that has now been closed since the pandemic. I can, speaking on behalf of all those children, all those families, I can tell you, this is a very important resource in our community. And I really, really hope that we find solutions to restore this amazing resource. We need it, the kids need it, the families need it. I hope there's a solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next.
Hi, I'm Barbara Thau, and I grew up actually in the East Village going to this pool. And my father, who was a Holocaust survivor, and but I'm mentioning this because it's institutional memory. It's psychic memory of a neighborhood, of a city. And the city has been complicit in gateways to gentrification. And what is this really about, right? What is this really about? What's more important than preserving something that can be preserved? To save the psychic, to save New Yorkers of the psychic toll of demolition, of constant removal of places, of memories. I mean, you know, I can go on and on. Do you know that Raging Bull was shot there? I mean, it's just so much, and that's one little thing. But I would say you cannot minimize the psychic toll of what happens to New Yorkers when things are destroyed, when they don't have to be destroyed. So that's my 2 cents. And also, one quick question. Why was there no repairs for 5 years? Like, why was it allowed? I just would like to know, why was it allowed to sit and fall into disrepair? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Hannah Boykoff. I am a resident of the West Village houses, and I grew up here since I was a child adopted from South America. Went to PS41. I used to run the Greenwich House Girls Youth Basketball League, which used to be the Greenwich Village Youth Council's basketball league. That league is almost 30 to 32 years old, depending on how it kind of started. It originally started in the Tony Dapp Center, where some girls came to play basketball, boys there. One girl, her name was Michelle Malakoff, asked, why aren't the boys passing me the ball? Her father created this league. It's helped 92 girls per season for 30 plus years. We're doing our anniversary next year. We actually use the gym upstairs for our games on Saturdays. Glick, thank you so much for supporting us. Botch and all the other people for supporting our league. We started from Tony Dapp. It's important to be included. All of that, realize that it's not just older people that want this. There are younger ones that want this. The kids that play in the basketball center, I spoke to a parent earlier today, and she remembers her daughter, who is 14, so younger than 17, who also got to use that center and thinks it's a shame that it's not being used or being restored. I understand that there's a lot that needs to go on with that. I know it's not going to be easy. Just possible provided solutions, at least with numbers, so we know if it's too expensive or too impossible, so then at least everyone has the facts to go from there. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Next.
Hey, I'm Chance Pryor. I grew up in Tribeca, but I came up here because this was the only pool growing up that we had access to, and I'm really concerned about the assault on public space by the city that it has undergone the last 10 years or so. There's less and less public spaces like this, especially in this exact neighborhood, and I don't trust that the city will restore that community aspect to this space. And another thing I want to ask is it that expert's opinion that who's the Gustavino ceiling expert that ceiling cannot be restored? Because I didn't hear that mentioned at all. I just heard that doesn't look good, but they restored the one at St. John the Divine, no problem, which was way more of a hassle. So I'm a little concerned about that. Also, when I see language like, yeah, we're going to do everything we can to preserve elements of the architectural history or integrity of this building, that's just an out to basically say we will save some things, but not most things. So I want the assurity that the architectural and historic things about this building that make it so important will be untouched and will be kept. Incorporate the staircase. That would be a travesty to lose that. Like, that would look so bad. And it's such a slap in the face to people that have a personal connection to this building. Like me, who grew up learning to swim here in the indoor and outdoor pool, and my father, who passed away. a couple years ago who wasn't able to use this pool because you guys shut it down. So just think about the people here and not the numbers. That's what's important.
Thank you so much. Next. Is that everyone in person? Okay, so let's go to Zoom. So please raise your hand if you are on Zoom. There is no speaker form online, unfortunately, but I asked if anyone else here wants to speak, so please come up. And while we get these last few in person, if you are on Zoom, please raise your hand and we'll start promoting people over. Yep, Bar.
Hi. I am very happy to hear that we're going to keep it for a recreational purpose. It's city-owned land. It should be that. Very glad. It's not going to big real estate. We're not going to get a luxury high-rise and pretend affordable housing. So that's fantastic. Thank you. I know that the people who are here today from Parks, were not around those 5 years where, everything fell to disrepair. It's not their fault. But we really do need to preserve. We need to preserve at least the exterior and whatever elements inside that we can and reincorporate them. It is critical. The lady earlier said something about community and how this building ties us together. Look at all of us here today. What we're seeing, particularly in this neighborhood, I did grow up here. I've lived on Bank Street my entire life, born and raised West Village kid, West Beth kid. We're seeing our entire community change around us, and we're not NIMBYs. We are not resistant to change, but especially now, we need the things that keep us together. We need access to recreation and community. And if we just knock this down, it's another piece of our culture that we're losing. So I think it's very important. I think they're leaving. Bye, Trisha. It would be great if you guys could put together a CAC they have for the casinos where a community advisory council is with you every step of the way so that you know what our historians and our preservationists and our residents and our schools and what all of the elements that make up our community really want for this, and work with them every step of the way rather than coming to the community board once a month or once every few months like, hey, here's the great idea we have. So please consider that, and thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Great. Yeah, I would go ahead and promote the 6.
There are 6. Yeah, there's Dylan and
Hello.
Yeah, go.
Am I ready? You ready for me?
So people need to be promoted to panelists, not just allowed to talk. Okay.
Please introduce yourself and go.
Okay. I am Dylan Spencer Kenny. I was born and raised on Leroy Street. I went to PS3, Elizabeth Irwin High School, but I am 100% a Carmine Street kid. And so you will hear me refer to it as such. I was mentored by the great Ray Pagan, a man who embodied what it meant to be a true New Yorker, not what is just profitable. So I want you all to remember, Keith Haring is watching, the community is watching, history is watching, and so is St. John's Burial Ground, aka J.J. Walker Park. So when you highlight the limited functions, you're acknowledging you're completely disconnected from the caliber of the success, the value, the community, the art. And yes, people still play handball. It's not just pickleball. I don't think you are actually in alignment of what the actual needs are, because Carmine Street fulfills more than just our local community. It reaches hundreds and hundreds of children across all of New York City, because Ray Pagan taught us what community was. Those walls, those tiles have true value. And so I'd like to ask you, while you're thinking, what would Ray do? If you don't know who Ray is, you might want to ask a village elder. And so as you're presenting this, that it's actually open to the public, I want you to conclude with the fact that you might just be going through the motions, and do not ask for applause when you're honest and say, we do not know. I want you to recommend a fully capable engineer who is highly educated to do a remodel. I believe someone is capable of such. I want you to thank yourselves for acknowledging you're not all experts. And I want you to recognize your privilege when you call it a dangerous space. And I urge you to consider whether or not it's a safety issue, or maybe it's actually your wealth disparity distorting your perceptions of what is at value.
Thank you. Can you wrap it up? Thank you so much.
Win. Community will win.
Thank you. Okay, so next we have Gil Vasquez. Yeah. Hi, you need to unmute yourself, Gil. Gil, you need to unmute. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gil Vasquez. I'm the Executive Director of the Keith Haring Foundation. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the importance of the Keith Haring mural at the site and the need to preserve this vital piece of public art. You know, we'd like to thank our friends at Parks, city officials, preservationists, and the community for looping us into the conversation to explore feasible solutions that honor Keith's vision and legacy. We are thrilled to hear that this land will remain a parks domain for public use. And I just want to conclude by saying that, you know, the Keith Haring Foundation remains committed to supporting efforts that safeguard this mural and its role in the cultural fabric of the neighborhood. Recognizing that whatever happens at this site might be a long way off, we encourage a continued open dialogue to find a path forward that respects both the community's needs and the significance of this historic artwork. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gil. Next, we have Andrew Bronson.
Yes, good evening and thank you. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep,
For both undergrad at NYU and grad at Columbia, I studied the essential role of bathhouses in shaping progressive New York. And Mosette Broderick even uses Dapolito as a stop on her architecture survey course when I was in it. It remains still as relevant today. This is unfortunately a trend with parks of rapid disinvestment enabling demolition by neglect, while our tax dollars are pilfered instead. You see, this has been a long-standing damage that has accumulated over decades without being fixed. It is so fishy. The Baruch and Rutgers Place bathhouses on the Lower East Side, which you probably don't know even exist for a reason, have been left by parks in total abandonment for decades without any form of replacement. Fortunately, reuse and restoration are indeed feasible even in the most dire circumstance. Central Park is now a crown jewel coming back from neglect. This past spring, Michigan Central Station reopened after being in a completely contemptible state, like you would not believe, and it is now a glowing symbol of revival. To see demolition of a place named for Dapolito, who fought Robert Moses, is the highest form of disgrace that cannot and should not ever stand. Independent, preservation-minded expertise opinions are duly needed. It is not an either or between history and usability. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Patricia Murphy. Oh, okay. So, maybe we just allow her to talk.
Okay, I got it. Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, I live in the Bronx and I'm big on historic preservation. I love old buildings and I think every building has a story. And I feel that we always have options on saving this building. And, you know, a lot of people remember the way it was, and for them to keep it a park, even if they keep it a park, to knock it down and build a whole new building, you know, people are still not going to be happy because they remember the way it was. They want it to stay that way. And I feel that if it has to be, you know, to do a complete gut renovation on the building, gut the whole interior of the building, if it's pushed to come to shove, and build a whole new interior and build another building next to it. If the facility is not big enough, build another building next to it, but keep the facade of the building. That's how I feel would be a compromise. Well, I would like to see the whole building save the interior too, because it's a lot of nice features inside and outside. And we need to save as much as we can, but if push comes to shove, don't knock the building down, but keep the facade and put a sloping roof on top of it in place of the dome, and repurpose the inside of it and build another building next to it. Now, the Lyceum in Brooklyn had a similar problem. That was a recreation center that was falling in disrepair. I went to concert dances there, you know, like square dancing. They used to have them in the Lyceum. And I remember the condition it was. It had a swimming pool that was not in use. The swimming pool was closed for a long time. The whole building was really dilapidated. And they didn't tear it down. They refurbished it. Now it's being used for something else, but the building is still there. They're just using it for something else. It was, you know, adaptive reuse. So I was happy to see that. And I think if they could do the same for this place, you know.
Okay, sorry, my mic wasn't on. All right, thank you, Patricia. And so next we have Victoria Hillside and Lucille
Hi,
DeVito.
everyone. This is Victoria Hellstrom. I'm sorry, I must have mistyped it.
Hillstrom, yes, that's what I thought. Okay.
I'm so sorry. I apologize. I was, at any rate, I would just like to quote ArtNet that the Dappolito Center is the coolest artist design swimming pools in the world, as well as the best artwork in the city. Every single art group is watching this unfold. The article went on to say that it originally was projected at what was originally projected at 4 million is now 20 million. However, according to Curbs, the Parks Department set aside $100 million. I would just like to say I am a designer. I live with a quite famous architect above me. Our work has been published around the world. We brought 1805 and 1815 buildings up to code that suffered damage from adjacent property from the Greenwich Hotel, now on 39 permits and certificates. The notion that the city claims that this is challenging, in all candor, there's no other way to say this, but they're just absolutely incompetent. The presentation is laughable. There is nothing that cannot be cured. And what we're trying to all understand is if $100 million was set aside for its repair, why are we being given nothing but excuses? And what I find so interesting in this conversation with the Parks Department is that the entire community has stepped forward and said, this represents community. And we're seeing the same play at the terrible East River Park. They put cement and tree stumps is their idea of a resiliency project. The Elizabeth Street Garden was sold for $1. It's like destroying.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you so much. Next, we have Lucille DeVito and then Nina Svatovic. Lucille, I think she declined to be promoted. Can she be allowed to speak?
She's off.
Okay, now she's off. Okay. Maybe she'll hop back on before. So Nina Svatovic, great. please unmute.
Okay.
Nina,
Hi.
okay.
Hi. So first and foremost, I just want to introduce myself as someone who really benefited from this center my entire life. Growing up, I grew up around the corner and I participated in all the sports that Ray Pagan organized. This place was so important to my upbringing and to who I am today. I want to emphasize the point of this being a real place of community and a refuge for people. The city is so expensive, and all my life I saw how it really served as a place for people to go and be together from all over the city, as my friend Dylan had said. And it's not just about Greenwich Village, it's about the entire city. So many people that frequented the center were from all over the city. And I really just believe in this place. I think we should preserve it just on the basis of how much it has given to our city and how much unity it has brought. And I hope that, we can look beyond financial reasoning and preserve a place that has meant so much to so many people. And that's all I want to say. It's a real refuge.
Thank you so much, Nina.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to turn it back over to Rich.
That's everyone. Thank you all for coming, and thanks for Parks and Steve's still here. Thank you for coming this evening. And I guess that's it. Have a safe trip home, and what? Yeah. Oh, we have business session. You could stay if you want. We're not going to write there's no resolution requested, so we'll just convene. Thank you.
And could we remind everyone to send written testimony to info? What is the exact address, Valerie?
It's info@manhattan.cb2.org. So again, we still have our business session.
I need just one moment to turn around. Okay, is everyone ready?
Guys, if we're having business session, so we can use the microphone so that Chenault and the other committee members can hear what's being said.
Yes, please.
So I mean, I'm just trying to get it going because it is on the agenda that we're having a business session. So, Chenault, maybe you want to take the lead here.
Ask the chairs of the committees, are we planning to write a resolution on this topic? No resolution on this topic.
Chenault, can you address that?
Yes. There is nothing before us to do a resolution about. There is no proposal, clearly. There is no application for anything. And this is, I was amazed at the comments and questions. They perfectly mirrored what happened in September without the presentation, because the presentation didn't illuminate anything except amplify what was being said at that time and what was circulated and not said by the Parks Department. So I don't feel like we made any progress tonight so far as the Parks Department goes.
Chenault.
Yeah.
I think it's important that the Parks Department announced that, and the city announced that it's going to retain as park use. But what I'm really interested in is you did the tour on Friday. you put on the hard hat, you went through the building, the different issues and challenges were pointed out to you. And I respect your opinion on these things. And did you think it was accurate when people said that the challenges weren't being addressed?
Sorry, I was.
I
share
think
the
that she
slides.
made it clear that it was simply a matter of money. And instead of working from the building and what it might do, it was, we have this much money and we can't restore the building with it. Likewise, as many of the public pointed out, what do you do with it given what kept being referred to as challenges? Could it be a children's gym if it's not big enough for a big people's gym? There's no exploration of what could be done with the building if it were restored again, with proper needs to meet the code and safety and so forth. And what I like to use for a case like this is the White House. In 1948, Margaret Truman's piano leg went through the ceiling of the East Room, and they found, much the same as with this building, that over the years, the alterations of adding a floor on top and not proper engineering had caused it to become in dangerous condition. And it was completely rebuilt, and entering it now, you never know that anything happened. And I think that the people from the department affirmed that, yes, it could be put right, and yes, it would take a lot of money, and certain changes would have to be made in order to make it safe and conform to code. And it may not be as useful for the same things it was used for before.
Can I ask a question?
And
Is the
with no figures, we
I'm sorry.
don't know how to compare.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said with no figures being given, we don't know how to make a comparison about that.
What I didn't understand is why the facade, the structure of the building could not be kept and the uses of the various floors be changed, either eliminated in order to incorporate a larger space for a basketball court, or that's what I didn't understand. What is there any exploration of keeping the facade, of keeping some of the history, of maybe not keeping the roof? Has there been any exploration of holding on to the historical nature of that building, and adapting it to maybe fewer uses, given the fact that we're going to have another rec center around the corner?
Seemingly not. I didn't hear it tonight. I've heard it.
And the other thing that I would ask in future meetings is not to spend a half an hour going over the history of the center. We already know it.
Well,
know,
we have a lot of new people on tonight. That was the reason I took those few little times.
No, not you
Just
or Rich. That those were
Yeah.
helpful, but them,
Yeah.
they kept, each person went through, the history of the Dapolito Center. We
Right. It
we
was
wasted
hard
a
to
lot of time, is my point.
I would say to that I think that this is a joint meeting of landmarks, and that is part of the story.
Yeah, but I think, Chanel, the last 2 or 3 slides 32, 33, 34, I think were where they said that they were open to seeing if more uses could be put into the space, the broader space, meaning, the pathway, the bocce area, et cetera. So they
Where
did,
is the bocce area? I didn't. Is that of an upstairs room or is that outdoors?
which one?
Hibachi.
Oh, it's outdoors. It's across the path. It's west of the building's footprint.
Oh, I'm not familiar with,
Yeah.
if we're taking the tour, Eric mentioned, about its being ill-used or ill-suited.
Yeah.
I just didn't know anything
Well,
about it. Maybe part of
no,
mentioned.
that was the point of trying of pledging to do a project to best use more of the block. That was the end of their presentation, I think, the last few slides, which we have. They've sent it to us. I think you have it.
Yeah,
To try to so as to whether it would be a gym for younger people in the current footprint or a regulation set of features in a slightly bigger footprint was the goal of the project they proposed at the end.
it did seem that much of what was presented, that was the size it is versus a regulation or a high school or a usual center kind of thing. I looked back at the specifications for other similar buildings in the city, and a number of them, presumably remodeled, were generally in the same size pool and so forth. But what immediately struck me, I didn't want to do their programming, was everything being small, apparently, that use it for small people.
Can I ask a process question? I just want to know what the outcome of this meeting is going to be. Are we going to have one report that's by both committees, or are we
Yes.
each doing a report? And since there are so many questions that were posed by the public and that seem lingering for us as well, it might be helpful to include those in a report for further discussion with the city and DPR.
Yeah, let's go back. There was a request for them to come back after a study was done and present the findings. They tried to do that today. If there are still questions, we should list those questions and get answers to them. But I think what's going to come down is on the landmark side is, what does tell me if you feel differently, but what does the committee representing the community feel is crucial about the structure? Is it just the facade, as some people said? Is it the facade and certain features that were inside?
I mean, I'll hop in here. I think when the Greenwich Village Historic District Extension 2 was created, it was created specifically to include this building. And I think it's amiss to not acknowledge that. So, no, but
the interior is not landmarks.
But the extension of the historic district was made specifically to include the building, not saying because it was a contributing building. So I'm just want to present that. I'm sure.
Chanel said that at the beginning. Yeah. I wrote that down, but
that gives it not an official status, but a status that's closer to an individual landmark than a random contributing building in the district.
Okay, but
that was elegant. Thank you. That was
a very broad term.
What aspects of the building are, again, this is a landmarks question for the landmarks committee representing, and that do you feel were crucial to be, saved? I mean, the community, people talk about community.
From a commission point of view, you're asking.
I suppose, yeah.
So that's the exterior. Dina has a whole thing that would take longer than her 2 minutes. She spoke about the period of it, and there are only a few of the buildings of that type that were sort of replicated around the city that are left. Maybe two others or one other. I believe one of them is not at the original purpose, or or recreation type purpose. But if this were to come to us just as a building on the street, we would be, and I think are about this one, that it absolutely should be saved. We have never, though they didn't come with an application, we've never had a proposal to demolish a building that there wasn't a full proposal for what was going to replace it. And so it's a whole unique thing about basically let's tear it down and see what we'll do. I don't think
Design what was going to be done. I mean, I think that's what they were saying. Figure out what we want there and then see how the existing building fits that.
And we
capability.
heard
My-
from the public from my tally, 2 people who were content to have it replaced. One was sort of whatever, and the other said it was okay. So they've heard, they heard from the even more people at the prior meeting. So they know what the community wants. I don't think there's any dispute about that.
No, I don't think that, I mean, we didn't describe what was required or requested or desired in terms of a parks facility, a rec center. That was what they proposed to do in a project. So it's sort of a chicken and egg thing here, right? You're saying, don't tear it down until we know what we want to do. They're saying, okay, let's sit down with the community and figure out what we want to do there. And then we'll talk about how it can fit into the place, into the lot, not into the footprint, but in the lot. And what I think we want from Landmarks is to say, what part of the existing structure is really important to salvage or to keep. And if it's all of it, you take that position. If it's some of it, I think we need to hear that as part of the process of doing this project.
Well, they pointed out over and over that this is an unusual situation in that the size seemed to be the big sticking point on when they showed the comparative basketball courts and weight rooms and so forth. The weight rooms strange because that could be split up, but those are the maximum size they can be within the, if you will, 1/3 of the building that anyone occupies, so that there's no possibility of making a bigger thing there. And they did explain about the structure, that combining them, and it seemed certainly reasonable, is just not a reasonable thing to take out a wall between one or another era.
Yeah, the two gyms. Yeah, the two gyms.
So that the footprint of the individual sections is what there is to deal with.
Yeah, I just, Chanel, I'm curious if the building was, let's go the other path. Let's say the building of money was found, money or money was determined to not be the constraint, and the building as is was repaired and renovated. I think the issue there is that it wouldn't be a great shell or a great structure for a great rec center. I think over time, gyms have changed. I think gym facility uses have evolved. Code requirements have changed. I think our community has seen new facilities that have opened in the neighborhood in Chelsea or down in Houston that gave the visions of what could be, not focused on what is there now. So I think that's the opposite end of the spectrum, is to say, you know, is Landmark saying renovate the building as is and then figure out what to do with in terms of park use? I think Brian.
Yeah, it seems like we're talking around the issue that in order to preserve the building for the community, the shell has to be maintained. And with adaptive reuse, you can work out the details room by room or element by element, talking about the stairs, talking about the elevators, talking about the walkways around the gym or walkways around the pool. Those are all details that would have to be addressed within the compulsion or the requirement to restore the building. The windows, the floors, the floor slabs, all that has to be maintained in order for the building to keep its character.
Can I ask a question though? So there seems to be two priorities here, right? One is to have, there's an interest in preserving the building because it has historic significance. There's also an interest in a facility that serves the community. And I'm wondering, I feel like we're in a position where what we're really being asked to do is scope this. And if we were scoping this and we were outlining various priorities, it might be a bare bones distillation of what we need in terms of both uses and in terms of preservation. So for example, perhaps the scope of the proposed would have to be preserve the facade, rebuild the inside to make it better work for.
We've lost the sound.
I'm sorry.
The sound is unintelligible.
Are you hear me now? Can you hear me?
We couldn't hear what you were saying.
I'm sorry. I was saying that I feel that the community is asked to scope
No,
this.
no, it's not the speaking, it's the mechanics. There's something wrong with the audio system now.
Whatever.
Maybe it's the mic.
All right.
It's the Zoom.
No, the whole system.
Yeah, I think it's the bandwidth on the internet and the Wi-Fi.
I would answer what I think was said. We talked about the chicken and the question of adaptive reuse is the two things. It's what uses are useful with this building redone and adapted. Competition swimming is not a use. Children learning to swim probably is a use, that kind of thing. And that's what the public testimony was over and over, figure it out what to do with this historic building you have that's a useful program. And over we got confused as to what was standard to be built now and what was illegal to have. And I started trying to write it down and I gave up because that got all intermeshed with what we want to do because that's what we usually do, or the law won't allow this, or it's not safe, or what.
So the primary focus has to be to preserve the building exterior.
Or anything that could be done that just preserves that right.
And the thing about the programming is that this is not going to be just a programming within the legal setting. It's going to be programming of that legal and creating and such. And it has to be coordinated. It has to go together. Yeah. Really? Is saying, I don't like, yeah. So if you're saying 8 weeks ago, this a proposal, that is a problem. What if they come back and give a proposal that says we can have it on the proposal?
And then also, I mean, we had suggested from those that are on the site on Chanel and Ridge, I mean, does anybody think that?
If we're going to continue the meeting, we have to do something about the sound. It's not intelligent. Is there no one there from the technical department?
So my question here is, does anyone think that they want to expand the size of the outdoor pool into the footprint of the building and that they can keep the facade?
Sure. It's not for. I want to expand that and just say that we can do it in the meeting. So like, I think that I can to the outdoor spaces, maybe not the individual. And
Is there no technical person there who can solve this? We have 31 members of the public trying to hear and attend the, well, not that. There's 31 people who are, they can't hear.
No, we can't hear you.
We
I
can
mean, we can hear
you,
it's
but you're
very
going in and
garbled.
out.
Very, very
Maybe if
garbled.
we had one less microphone, are there 3 microphones going? Can we?
Now, what, whoever's talking now will hear. Susanna is inaudible.
Can't hear that at all.
See the eventual completion of these components. Places we can say that some of them, places the other want this size field and this size gym and this size number of classrooms and these are all been I've seen but that there's some sort of program right. It was not if some of those programs don't in that illegal, as long as that illegal business regions are. That is this way, that would be one works committee. I'm not speaking of that would report. We're joint meeting needs to be a joint report. We're going to do a position and board position, not demolish.
We can tell an interested what was being said.
That's what we see the line. That's the place we're at. Yeah. I would be contribute to that process. Maybe we should make that was not. No, I know. I mean, it's what's being discussed here, and it's thousands of add to the report where there is no like showing a business session from another one. It was brought up here, we're discussing, so that's our report, whatever it is you brought up. And it's found out later. Recommendation, on the different types of things like recommendation, that would be a resolution. So. We're supposed to do something. Brought up in a point here, it should go into the report, having a discussion.
The sound somehow.
It can be further investigated, but it didn't brought up here. It should go in the report. Let's discuss that.
You use the microphone, or you could move up here too. No, it's still being recorded. You just use the microphone. It's not that. That's what we're at the meeting too. Supposed to be out.
Is this any better, by the way, online?
Oh, now we just got it.
I can understand whoever just spoke.
No.
What? Cannot hear any, I mean, we can hear, we just can't understand anything anyone's saying.
We just heard
Anyway,
Mark really clearly.
I think we're oh my God, it's important, whether it's Chanel or Rich, you know, I think it
Guys,
should be
can you
last, like,
please
piggyback
turn off
on
all the
Zoom, like,
microphones
all of
other
the
than the person who's
members of the
speaking?
committees on this, let's just make sure it's a complete.
Okay, guys,
report to the
you
document.
have to fix this problem.
Is on issue. Right? We got, you know, we did it, and we got 2 weeks, so.
Need to be rebooted with something else. We haven't heard, we haven't been able to understand anything.
I'm trying to, give me a second, I'm trying to solve your other problem. No, I can't do it. All right, I gotta go back to. 1 sec.
What?
I don't know what's going on. Right. Okay, you should be able to be heard now.
That.
Can you hear us? We can't hear Chanel.
Yes,
I'm
there's
working on it.
feedback.
I don't know what happened.
Mark,
it
we
sounds
can hear
like 2
you
hours,
very
3
well,
hours
but
in.
not the others.
I mean,
Sounds
if I
fine
join
now.
audio, it's gonna back feed.
Degrade slowly over time.
They can hear each other on Zoom, but we cannot hear one, and we cannot communicate between Zoom and in
The
the room.
mics at the table are just echoing way too much.
Can you
All right,
please turn
I-
off the
Yeah, I
mics
think
that are not
we've
in
agreed
use and
we'll
just
create
use
a
one mic?
set of notes coming out of the discussions of the meeting. I still think there's an open question of what happens next, and you know, I think that's what we have to discuss. I think, but I'll tell you what happens next is there's feedback provided to the Parks Department about the presentation they gave.
Right.
And their proposal to do a project that follows as she tries to line up some funding, which I think she's gonna have a tough time doing since we don't know exactly what we want to do.
So is this some sort of letter that has our questions from this presentation, or?
No, we put it in the notes and then the notes go to the you know, head of whoever we send them to, whoever we want to send them to.
Okay, so the notes are like a cover letter.
Yeah. That's what we do.
This is just not
Okay.
satisfactory.
Thank you. You gotta say goodbye to Chanel.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, yeah.
All right, thanks for coming.
All right, good night.
I'll just scan them and send them to you as PDFs.
I've got the.
That somebody left here.
Thank you. That's 2 and 2 nights.
Is it adjourned? It looks adjourned.
Can we end the Zoom?
Yes, I am trying to.
Yeah, I heard that.
Mallory, can you wave if
If
we do that?